owner of the US Mega Farm. Este video es puramente para entretenimiento y no infringe derechos de autor en los derechos de la novela y la imagen son del autor original. No reclamamos propiedad. No te gusta esperar y quieres escuchar este fanfic completo ahora. Suscríbete a nuestro Patreon, donde encontrarás los mejores fanfics. Chapter 926 Abnormal Energy Channel. Ding dong, an abnormal energy belt has been found ahead. Please go there as soon as possible. Qin-Zhu, who was walking leisurely behind the gorilla, was startled by the system prompt sound that suddenly came to his ears. Abnormal energy belt? What the hell is this? After waving his tail and signaling the white tiger behind him to be careful, Qin-Zhu also tensed his nerves and swam forward little by little. Roar. After turning around a small hill, the gorilla stopped and began to climb up a mountain that looked not very small. How to say it? This mountain seems to be the origin of a mountain range. Although it doesn't look very spectacular here, you will find that the mountain is getting bigger and bigger as you climb. Qin-Zhu feels this way now. It looks like a small mountain, but after climbing for a while, he looked up and found that he was still halfway up the mountain. Hiss, Qin-Zhu spit out apricots with some dissatisfaction, turned around and looked around, and suddenly felt that there seemed to be an inexplicable sense of familiarity in his heart. But after looking for a while, he still couldn't remember where that sense of familiarity came from. Shaking his head in doubt, Qin-Zhu finally gave up and continued to climb up the mountain behind that gorilla. Is this it? After more than half an hour of trekking, Qin-Zhu and the other three beasts, finally reached the top of the mountain. Roar, the gorilla roared twice, indicating that this was the place, and then twisted its big butt and walked down the other side of the mountain. Qin-Zhu was confused. What is this? Do you want to learn from Wang Xiao? But I am not a devil. Shaking his tail, Qin-Zhu followed directly. He is not in his original form now, and he will still be afraid of this and that. With his powerful snake body, he is not afraid even if he faces the cannon directly. Ahem, didn't you see the example in front of him? If it weren't for the gorilla's demonstration, Qin-Zhu really didn't dare to get serious with hot weapons. After all, he has been instilled with the concept that firearms are invincible since he was a child. Roar, a low roar. The sense of comfort made Qin-Zhu, who had just followed, shut all over and almost turned around and ran away. There was no way, because he was too familiar with this sound. Every time he reached the extreme, he could not help but let out a low roar of this tone. Could it be that in front of him was, thinking of this, Qin-Zhu felt goosebumps all over his body. Roar. The white tiger behind him looked at the big python in front of him with some surprise. There is no danger, why are you trembling? Although the white tiger only roared, it also woke Qin-Zhu from his meditation. After coming back to his senses, Qin-Zhu couldn't help but feel a little funny. Wasn't he thinking too much? This is in the wilderness, and it's a gorilla, how could it be possible? Comforting himself in this way, Qin-Zhu slowly moved his body and went in the direction where the gorilla disappeared. After walking a few steps, Qin-Zhu found something wrong. Because this is not going down the mountain, it is clearly a large canyon on the top of the mountain. Well, that can't be said, it can only be said that it is a small basin on the top of the mountain. After swimming down for dozens of meters, Qin-Zhu found that he had reached the bottom, and the low roar of the gorilla in his ears became louder and louder, accompanied by a burst of snapping sounds. Snapping. Swallowing his saliva, Qin-Zhu mustered up his courage and swam over. He had made up his mind. If it was really as he imagined, he would definitely kill them all with an ice cone. Fortunately. Turning a corner, Qin-Zhu, who poked out a big head from the woods again, breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. It turned out that the so-called snapping sound was made by the gorilla when he was playing in a pool of water. It was just that because of his large body, every time he turned around, he would bring a burst of splashing water. Hiss, after roaring twice, Qin-Zhu did not rush to the pool to settle accounts with this guy, but wandered around this small canyon. The canyon is really not big, only about 1,000 square meters. Well, of course, considering Qin-Zhu's current size, it's only about 1,000 square meters, which is really not very big. He turned around and it was gone. Although the area is not very large, Qin-Zhu is sure that this canyon is definitely not normal. Because the plants here are so lush that it's incredible. Towering trees can be seen everywhere, blocking out the sun and sky. It seems that if you stand under the trees, you can't see what the sky looks like. Moreover, some big trees can't be hugged even with his current size. Not only trees, but some ordinary weeds can be more than one person deep. As for animals, Looking at the gorilla who is enjoying the waterfall washing his body in the pool, Kinzu can understand that this is definitely not normal. Wait, waterfall. At this time, Kinzu noticed that there was a waterfall with a large flow of the innermost part of the pool. It's just that because the gorilla was tossing too hard just now, Kinzu didn't associate the sound of water with the waterfall. Twisting his body, Kinzu came to the edge of the pool and found something wrong. It turned out that the pool was actually flowing down the mountain without stopping. Could it be that this is the stream in the mountains? Kinzu shook his tail and felt that this was the right answer. Thinking of the clear stream water, which turned out to be the bath water for these guys, Kinzu suddenly had the urge to throw this guy down the stream. Ding dong, an unknown energy channel was found. Do you want to absorb it? The mechanical voice of the system suddenly sounded in Kinzu's ears. Energy channel? What the hell is this? The continuous reminders of the system really made Kinzu a little confused. This was the first time this happened since he got the system. Moreover, Kinzu had an illusion that the system's voice seemed a little excited. How could it be possible? This was not the little girl Fefade, how could there be any emotional changes? Thinking of little Fefade, Kinzu couldn't help but miss this little girl. He didn't know how she was living in another world. Ding dong, an unknown energy channel was found ahead. Please decide whether to absorb it. Seeing that Kinzu didn't respond for a long time, the system seemed to be impatient and couldn't help reminding again. Absorb it. Shrugging his shoulders, Kinzu smiled and said, I want to see what makes you so impatient. The system ignored Kinzu's ridicule and immediately started to run at full speed after getting his consent. Ding dong, start absorbing the unknown energy channel, the current progress is 0.1%, 0.2%, damn, so slow. Looking at the long progress bar in front of him, Kinzu suddenly felt cheated. How long do I have to wait? Chapter 927 Unknown Fruit. Just as Kinzu imagined, more than half an hour had passed, but the progress bar was not even 1%, as slow as a snail. System, come out, are you going to let me wait here forever? Kinzu, who could no longer bear it, finally decided not to endure it any longer, and started calling the system directly. It seemed a little surprised. The mechanical voice of the system was unusually strange. He only heard it say lightly, Host, please do as you please. This system can complete all the procedures by itself. Puff, Kinzu almost spit out a mouthful of blood after hearing the system's calm words. Damn, you didn't need me to wait for you to say it earlier, so I stood here for half an hour in vain. But after the system said this, it seemed to be busy with its own things and never paid attention to Kinzu again. After cursing a few times, Kinzu, who didn't get a response, felt a little bored, so he simply turned off the system and turned around to find his friends. As soon as he turned around, his already restless mind became even more depressed. It turned out that the gorilla seemed to understand the importance of pleasing the seniors, and took out all the good things he had collected in the past few years from his old nest. Now the two guys were squatting together, sharing the fruits. Although a little depressed, Kinzu couldn't control his curiosity and staggered over. He also wanted to know what the fruits that this mutant gorilla could collect were like. Because at this time he suddenly remembered something, the gorillas are vegetarians, so how much food does it eat in a day with such a big body? However, after getting closer, Kinzu was a little stunned. This fruit, is it too big? Even so, they are still sharing it so vigorously, is it enough for you to dry your teeth? It turned out that the largest of the fruits shared by the two guys was only the size of a fist, and Kinzu was really speechless. Roar! Seeing Kinzu come in, the gorilla seemed to react and hurriedly pushed half of the fruits in front of him to Kinzu. That means, this is a tribute to you. Kinzu was not interested in the pile of fruits of different sizes on the ground. But when he turned his head, he found that the white tiger next to him was chewing a fruit, and he became curious. It's okay for the gorilla to like it, after all, it grew up eating this. But the white tiger is a thorough carnivore, why would it be interested in these fruits? Kinzu, who was curious, couldn't help but put his big head towards the pile of fruits. Before he got close, Kinzu's sensitive nose smelled a fragrance, and it was the kind of fragrance that made people tremble all over. Is this the smell of spiritual energy? Kinzu widened his eyes in surprise. He never thought that he would find such a familiar thing in this barren mountain forest. Spiritual energy, that is pure spiritual energy. Apart from those medicinal herbs that have been grown for hundreds of years, what else on earth can have such pure spiritual energy? Could it be that these are treasures like Ganoderma lucidum and ginseng? Doubt arose in his heart, and Kinzu looked at the white tiger beside him with some displeasure. Hiss, he roared at the guy twice in a low voice, and then stretched out his tail and directly brought all the fruits in front of it and the gorilla to himself. Now, the two guys were completely dumbfounded. No way. The boss won't let you do this. I have already given you most of the fruits, okay? Can't you leave a few for us? Although they complained in their hearts, the two guys looked at each other and no one dared to say anything. There was no way. Kinzu brought too much pressure to them. Oh, no, it should be said that Cheese brought too much pressure to them. Now they don't know that Cheese is now Kinzu, their real master. After collecting the fruits in front of him, Kinzu looked at the gorilla again. Although he didn't say anything, his meaning was very clear. Are there any more? No more. Really? Really? The gorilla was about to cry. I saved up for so long to save this little thing, where can I find it for you? Since there is no more, forget it. Shaking the huge python head, Kinzu wrapped all the fruits with his mind and put them directly into his backpack. Ouch, roar, roar, this scared the two guys and they stepped back several steps. What's going on? Magic. Kinzu didn't mean to explain to the two guys. Well, of course, the key is that he couldn't explain it. So, ignoring the two guys' curious eyes, Kinzu began to wander around in the basin again. After turning around for a long time and making sure that there was nothing left, he leisurely returned to the side of the pool. System, since you said you can handle it, can I go back? Whatever. Listening to the concise and powerful words of the system in his ears, Kinzu couldn't help but twitch the corners of his mouth. Sure, sure. Why do you have to act casual? If I go to Mars, can you also collect energy? You can try. The sun sets. Although the golden sunset has no temperature, it shines on the vast pasture and looks particularly charming. Shaking his groggy head, Kinzu opened his eyes from the soft leather armchair and asked in a daze, "Where is this? Haven't we arrived home yet?" Rolling his eyes, Dai stretched out his hand to open the car door and said unhappily, "We arrived home a long time ago, but the lady saw that you were sleeping soundly and didn't let us call you." "Ah, so that's it." Touching his head, Kinzu ignored Dai's slightly complaining tone, showed a worn smile on his face, and walked quickly towards the villa. "Wife, what delicious food are you going to make today?" After entering the villa, looking at the two figures busy in the kitchen, Kinzu felt that the fatigue of the day seemed to disappear. "Guess." Hearing the familiar voice behind her, Zumengyo didn't even turn her head. While talking to Eva, she stuck out her tongue playfully. "Guess. I guess there will be a sumptuous dinner tonight." Kinzu walked into the kitchen with a sly smile, and directly embraced the beauty's slender waist from behind. After winking at Eva next to him, he teased, "Is that right, wife? How about we have a female body?" "Go away," turning back coquettishly and giving this unruly guy a glare, the beautiful Zhu felt ashamed and angry. As a woman of the new era, she certainly knew what the so-called female body was. Now this guy actually dared to let her prepare a female body, which was simply unforgivable. Chapter 928 Another Form of Spirit Beast. When the morning sun came again, Kinzu slowly opened his eyes from his sleep. Half sitting up, leaning on the head of the bed, stretching lazily, Kinzu finally let his eyes stay on the smooth skin of the beauty beside him. He still couldn't taste the female body in the end, but as compensation, he still loved the beautiful Zhu at night. Moreover, when the beauty was a little unclear, Kinzu also fooled her into signing countless unequal treaties. One of them was that one day in the future, the two of them would have a real female body. Ahem, of course, whether the treaty will take effect depends entirely on God's will. With a naughty smile on his lips, Kinzu turned over and got out of bed, covered Zumengyo with a quilt, and then walked into the bathroom to wash up. "Boss, good morning." Eva, who was preparing breakfast for a few little ones downstairs, saw Kinzu walking downstairs lazily and greeted him with a smile. "Honey, you're still here so early." Kinzu smiled and winked at Eva. After sitting on the sofa, he looked at Daha and Dao, who were obviously bigger, and asked, "How are they? Are there any abnormal behaviors of the little guys?" "No abnormal behaviors." After wiping her hands, Eva stood up and said strangely, "But their appetite is increased." This, Kinzu touched his nose and felt helpless. Although he wanted them to lose weight, he thought that they had just evolved yesterday and now's the time when they needed energy replenishment, so he said, "Let's feed them more. They are growing now, and we can't treat them badly." "That's right." Snapping his fingers, Eva nodded in agreement. "If you ask me, now is not the time to make them lose weight. They are still growing, and huskies are naturally active dogs. If they don't eat more, they might grow crooked in the future. Grow crooked? Kinzu couldn't help but twitch his mouth when he heard such a familiar line. He couldn't think of anyone else who would talk like that except for his naughty sister. Yes, Shara told me. Coming to the sofa and sitting next to Kinzu, Eva explained with a smile. She said that a girl in their school ended up in the hospital because her parents didn't let her eat. This damn girl. Rolling his eyes, Kinzu finally understood that Eva was clearly instigated by the girl to stand up for the little guys. By the way, where's the little sister? Hasn't she come back yet? Thinking of Kinru, Kinzu suddenly remembered that this girl was taken out to play by Sayu the day before yesterday. Why hasn't she come back yet? She'll probably be back today. Shrugging her shoulders, Eva said with a smile, "You're a bit of an incompetent brother. My sister hasn't been back for 2 days, and you're just reacting now. Well, isn't it that there's a lot going on recently?" With 2 embarrassed laughs, Kinzu quickly changed the subject, muttering with some dissatisfaction, "This damn girl actually dared to go out for so long. Just wait and see how I deal with her when she comes back." Really? Eva pouted, not giving Kinzu a chance to react, and directly retorted, "Yesterday was so chaotic, how could you ask her to come back?" When she noticed something was wrong, Mengo called Sayu and asked her little sister to come back later. Kinzu was so ashamed, it seemed that no one was more responsible than his own brother. "Well, I'm hungry, is breakfast ready?" There was no way, under Eva's somewhat teasing gaze, Kinzu could only decisively shut up and never mention this topic again. "Hehe, it's ready. I'll get it for you." With 2 sweet laughs, Eva stopped attacking Kinzu and stood up and walked towards the kitchen. After breakfast, while Eva was washing the dishes and cleaning the kitchen, Kinzu lay on the sofa and turned his sight to cheese. Although the white tiger can now share his vision with him, compared with the cheese he is used to, Kinzu still chose the one he is familiar with. There is no way he doesn't want to learn how to walk with a tiger's body after he just learned how to walk with a snake's body. Besides, they are together at this time, why not? However, when Kinzu shifted his vision, he found that the world seemed a little different. Why did the grass around here become so tall? Moreover, the trees became unusually thick. Has he not come back yet? Is he still in the canyon on the top of the mountain? Kinzu, who was a little confused, twisted his body and wanted to stand up to take a look. Until this time, he was surprised to find that it was not the trees and grass that became bigger, but he himself became smaller. In other words, Cheese changed from a python more than 10 meters long to a little guy more than 1 meter long. Because not far away, his very luxurious villa was still standing there, and it couldn't be faked. What's going on? Kinzu opened the system in a daze, but found that at this time, the system's absorption progress was only 43%. What the hell are you absorbing? Kinzu shook his tail irritably, and was a little confused for a while. What the hell was going on? This is just a reduced form of the spirit beast, what's the fuss? It seemed that because the absorption of energy was disturbed, the mechanical voice of the system actually had a hint of dissatisfaction. "Yo, you're still alive." He opened his mouth in surprise. He hadn't heard that voice of the system since last night. Kinzu thought that this guy stayed in the mountains. "Nonsense, you didn't die, how could I die?" After a disdainful retort, the system fell silent again. No matter how Kinzu teased it, it never appeared again. This guy is really elusive. Kinzu pouted and suddenly thought that although the system said that this was the appearance of the divine beast shrinking, it didn't tell him how it became bigger. Hiss, as if it understood what Kinzu meant, the cheese, which was still very quiet, spit out apricots uncontrollably. Then, Kinzu felt that the world was dark. And then, it was bright again. Blinking, Kinzu raised his head and looked around, and suddenly let out a long breath. This familiar feeling is so fucking good. Twitching his tail, feeling the vibration from the ground, Kinzu felt so comfortable in his heart. Because people who have never been strong can't experience the comfort of having a strong power. So, now Kinzu feels how lucky it is to have such a strong python body. Chapter 929 The tiger cub being punished by his father. After walking around the grove, Kinzu not only found the miniature white tiger, but also found a miniature gorilla sleeping soundly under a tree. These guys don't have a fixed nest, and they sleep outdoors every day. Well, the white tiger is better, this guy has a nest under the villa's pergola. However, considering its size yesterday, it is estimated that even if the pergola is dismantled, it will not be enough for half of its body. Thinking of this, looking at the two miniature guys, Kinzu's mind flashed. Isn't this just right? 3 ready-made free bodyguards. With the 3 of them guarding the villa, let alone a few people, even if thousands of people come, as long as they don't use missiles, Kinzu's family can probably retreat safely. Come on, cheese, shrink your body. After giving an order in his heart, Kinzu closed his eyes, waiting for the familiar feeling to come again. Sure enough, just as the idea in his mind came up, before he had time to close his eyes, he felt a familiar dizziness suddenly hit him. After a while, Kinzu, who had adapted to the new environment, turned around and hissed at the 2 guys a few times, then led them towards the villa. What's wrong? Are you going out again? Eva, who had just cleaned up the kitchen, happened to see Kinzu putting on his coat, and asked curiously, Do you want me to call your sister down for you? After experiencing the battle yesterday, Kinzu gave several female bodyguards a day off today. Except for those who needed to be on duty at the door, they were probably sleeping in now. No, let her sleep a little longer. Waving his hand, Kinzu did not intend to break his promise. After putting on his own cashmere coat, he smiled and said, I'll just stroll around the door, not far away. That's good. Hearing Kinzu say this, Eva breathed a sigh of relief and smiled and blinked her beautiful big eyes. I always feel that you will get into trouble once you go out, so you should stay at home for a few days. Rolling his eyes, Kinzu ignored the naughty girl, waved at Dao and Xiao who were resting in the nest after eating and drinking, and said with a sly smile, Come on, I'll take you to see your brother. Although, the 2 little tigers who had eaten and drunk their fill moved out of the bed very reluctantly, stepped on their short legs, and followed Kinzu out in the daze. As for the brother he mentioned, they didn't care about it at all. However, when Dao and Xiao came under the porch and saw the guy who occupied their father's nest, they were all in a state of confusion. Who is this? I don't know. It occupied my father's nest, what should I do? Go up and get it. Let's go together. After discussing it, the 2 little guys howled and pounced on the white tiger under Kinzu's smiling gaze. The white tiger, who had just laid down in his familiar nest and was about to take a nap, was disturbed by 2 little guys. Seeing them rushing towards him with their claws and teeth paired, the white tiger's mouth cracked, revealing a sinister smile. And the 2 childish cries of pain seemed so harsh in the quiet villa in the early morning. Although their sizes now look similar, when they really face each other, you will know how big the difference is. The white tiger just raised his paw lightly and pressed the 2 little guys to the ground, unable to move. They could only make weak wails to express their current situation. Not to mention, the cries of the little guys are really useful. At least, the big brother and Betty, the little bear in the room, rushed out with a bark. Dare to bully my brother at the door of my capital, do you want to die or what? What's going on? A sudden break sounded, and her brother barely stopped his forward rush. Looking at the 3 jaguars in front of him, which were almost the same in size and appearance, his mind was in a mess. What was going on? Could it be that he was excited because he found his long-lost brother? Betty, who was originally slower than her brother, also swayed his bloated body and came up at this time. Opening his mouth, Betty was about to roar and give the guy in front of him who bullied his brother a blow, but he was also stunned. It didn't matter that he was stunned, but the roar had already reached his throat. Now there was no place to vent, and he almost choked to death. Cough cough, cough. After a series of dry coughs, Betty simply sat down next to him, staring at her brother with big eyes, watching the 3 guys in front of them making a fuss. It was obvious that the 3 guys in front of them were from the same family, otherwise the owner would not have stood idly by. However, this would make it difficult for the 3 of us. Betty and Jaha looked at each other, feeling bitter, even worse than taking Coptice Chinensis. You said it was so comfortable to sleep in the nest, why did you join in the fun? Now it's over, right? You can't go back even if you want to. Okay, stop teasing them. Seeing that it was almost time, Kinzu also came over from the side, looking at the 2 little guys with their heads drooping after being beaten by the white tiger with a smile on his face. How is it? Do you still recognize who this is? After a few low sobs, Dao had a word in his heart that he didn't dare to say. From the moment he was pressed to the ground, he knew who this guy was. Apart from the old man who liked to trick them like this, who else would dare to treat him like this? But what's the use of knowing it? It's too late, and those who should be beaten have been beaten, so he can only remain silent. Shaking his little head, the white tiger let go of the 2 little guys, stepped on his short legs, and swayed into his nest, ready to catch up on some sleep. Although the white tiger's actions looked a little funny, both Kinzu and the other kids felt like a king had arrived. Pa! Pa! What king has arrived? Kicking the white tiger's nest speechlessly, Kinzu seemed to be trying to find balance, muttering, "Even if there is a king, it's me, and you will have to listen to me." The white tiger rolled its eyes in a very human way, turned its head to the side, and ignored the idiot's intentions. Seeing this, Kinzu felt a little amused, but also found it very funny. It seemed that the white tiger was now very spiritual. Compared with the white tiger that only knew to obey, it now seemed to have more wisdom. Wisdom? Kinzu smiled dumbly, and did not delve into the issue any further, turning around and walking to the other side. Chapter 930. Baby Gorilla. Big Gorilla. Honey, what are you doing? It was noon, and the beautiful Zhu, who was stretching lazily, came down from upstairs. However, when she saw the silly little guy sitting on the sofa, her eyes were full of surprise. How come there is another little guy in the house after just a while? Ha ha, wife, come and see, this guy is very smart. Reaching out to greet Zhu, Kinzu ordered the little gorilla who was still in a daze. Go, bring breakfast to the hostess. Huh. Hearing Kinzu's voice, the silverback gorilla, oh no, it should be called the silverback gorilla now, because its current height from head to toe is less than 1 meter tall. After hearing Kinzu's order, the silverback gorilla was stunned for a moment, but soon reacted, jumped off the sofa nimbly, and ran straight to the kitchen. After Zhu sat down on the sofa with a surprised face, the silverback gorilla had already walked over slowly with a tray. Because on that small tray, in addition to the sandwich and fried eggs, there was also a cup of fragrant hot milk. This, reaching out to take the tray from the little gorilla and placing it on the coffee table, Zhu stared at it carefully for a while, then turned her eyes to Kinzu. Tell me the truth, what's going on? What else could it be? Shrugging his shoulders, Kinzu pretended to be indifferent and said with a smile, I picked it up. Picked it up? Zhu rolled her eyes helplessly, thinking to herself, can't you change your excuse? Tell me, which of the pets in your villa was not picked up by you? As if he had noticed Zhu thoughts, Kinzu sat up and leaned on the sofa cushion, looking at her very seriously. Wife, this time you really picked it up. Then was it fate last time? Grinning, Kinzu knew that this girl was really angry, blaming him for not telling her anything. Okay, wife, come here, I'll tell you in detail. After staring at each other for 5 seconds, Kinzu decisively raised his hands in surrender. There was no other way. If he didn't surrender, he would see the golden beans fall into the ground. He was not afraid of anything now, not afraid of officials or gangsters, but afraid of women crying. When a woman cried, he immediately became a little confused. Then tell me. Seeing that Kinzu had given in, Zhu sat on the sofa, the expression on her face was restrained, revealing a smug smile, crossing her legs and looking at him. No, wife, you, Kinzu opened his mouth in surprise, saying that he was a little confused now. What's going on? Where is the simple and lovely Zhu before? Shara is right. If I don't teach you a lesson, you will want to go to heaven. Zhu pouted, and the expression on her face once again turned into a tearful look. Okay, I knew it was that damn girl. Rubbing his swollen temples, Kinzu was already thinking about how to deal with that damn girl when she came back. Will you tell me or not? Seeing that Kinzu still didn't move, Zhu couldn't help but regret her outspokenness. This time she sold out both herself and her sister-in-law. Tell me, isn't it okay for me to tell you? Kinzu smiled bitterly and put his arm around the beautiful Zhu's slender waist. He recounted what happened yesterday from beginning to end. Finally, seeing her somewhat horrified eyes, Kinzu said helplessly, the reason why I didn't tell you is because I was afraid that you would worry. But if you don't say anything, we will be more worried. Zhu pouted and calmed down her mood. Her eyes could not help but sweep to the little gorilla who was watching TV with relish. She asked in disbelief, it's this guy. When it grows bigger, it will be 5 or 6 meters tall. Of course, can I lie to you? Then let it grow for me and see. Kinzu was sweating. Do you not believe me? Or do you not believe me? But looking at the suspicious eyes of the beautiful Zhu, Kinzu already understood that she just didn't believe him. Come on, little gorilla, let's go outside. Pulling the silverback gorilla's ears, Kinzu pulled the little guy who was still immersed in the TV to the grass outside. Ouch, the little gorilla whimpered in dissatisfaction. He was just watching intently when Kinzu took him out. He was very unhappy now. He wanted to get mad, but he didn't dare to. He didn't know why. He could kill the guy in front of him with a slap, but he just couldn't muster the courage to resist. Why are you yelling? Come on, grow bigger for the mistress to see. He slapped the little guy on the head and vented all the frustrations he had with Zumengyo on the little guy. In fact, he had a reason that he didn't say. Who made this guy so embarrassed yesterday? If he didn't punish him now, who should he punish? Who? The little gorilla, who was completely out of temper after being slapped, whimpered innocently. His pitiful appearance almost made the beautiful Zumengyo's maternal instinct burst out and punish Kinzu again. Fortunately, Kinzu slapped him again after seeing that it was not good. Still pretending to be pitiful here. If you don't go, you won't have any food to eat tonight. If the little guy could speak, he would definitely refute Kinzu in a depressed tone. Who likes to eat your food? Give me back my fruit, and I won't eat your food for a year. Unfortunately, although it is very smart now, the vocal cords of gorillas are still different from those of humans, so Kinzu still can't understand the calls it makes. It can't be said that he can't understand it at all. He still understands the general meaning. Therefore, in order to get a job in front of Zumengyo, after hearing the little gorilla's voice, Kinzu's black and bright eyes turned twice. Little guy, if you were obedient, I will give you some fruit to eat later. After hearing Kinzu's words, the silverback gorilla immediately raised his little head in surprise, and his bright big eyes stared at Kinzu without blinking. The meaning is very clear. Is everything you said true? Kinzu understood, so he was even more depressed. Damn, is my reputation so bad now? How come even a gorilla doesn't believe what I say now? Really? Don't worry. Kinzu had no choice but to nod seriously under the gaze of the little gorilla's bright eyes. When you get through this level, the master will definitely reward you with some fruits. Ouch! After hearing Kinzu's words, the little guy not only did not start the transformation journey as Kinzu expected, but directly stretched out his hands. What are you doing? Kinzu looked at the pair of small paws stretched out in front of him in some astonishment, and suddenly a very strange feeling arose in his heart. This scene, why is it so familiar? Chapter 931. You here to invade the Earth? Yes, very familiar. Kinzu stared blankly at the two dark little paws stretched out in front of him, scratching his head in confusion. Little guy, what do you mean? Squeak. Seeing that Kinzu did not respond for a long time, the little gorilla became a little impatient, stretched out its little paws in front of Kinzu again, and the cry from its mouth became a little sharp. You mean, 10 fruits? Kinzu, who seemed to understand something, asked with a gradually darkening face. Although nodding excitedly, the little gorilla seemed very happy and jumped a few times in place. This guy, a few black lines appeared on his forehead. Kinzu now wanted to slap this dang little thing against the wall. And it was the kind that could not be picked out. Aren't you taking advantage of the fire? If it didn't have only 2 little paws, the price could be doubled. Who taught you all this? Why did you learn to barking before learning anything else? Hey, husband, are you done? Just when Kinzu was struggling with whether to turn into a python and teach this hateful little guy a lesson, Zumengyo's suspicious voice behind him sounded at an inopportune time. Okay, I'll be right there. After turning around and agreeing loudly, Kinzu turned his head, gritted his teeth, and agreed. Okay, you're in, 10 is 10. Although it was just 10 fruits of unknown function, Kinzu was still very depressed. Because this feeling of being robbed by people, oh no, by beasts, was really unpleasant. Of course, this guy completely forgot that he robbed these fruits from others. Now hurry up and make me bigger. If you do something weird again, I'll see how I deal with you. After glaring at this guy with hatred, Kinzu turned around again, and the expression on his face instantly turned into a smile that made people feel like spring breeze. Wife, look, it will be fine soon. Really? After looking at Kinzu with some doubt, and seeing him nod with certainty, Zumengyo could not help but look at the little gorilla. Ah, husband, come here, come on. At this sight, the rosy little face of the beautiful Zhu turned pale in an instant, and a scream that made Kinzu feel distressed came out of her mouth. Because at the moment when Kinzu turned around, the gorilla, which was originally a little mini, suddenly swelled up like an inflated balloon. Don't be afraid, wife, it's okay, don't be afraid. Kinzu rushed to Zumengyo in a few steps, hugged the frightened beauty, and comforted her softly. Good boy, look, it's very obedient, not scary. Hearing Kinzu say this, Zumengyo barely controlled her emotions, and resisted the golden beams that were about to fall. Through her misty eyes, she looked at the little gorilla opposite who was standing there stupidly and dared not move. Now it should be called a gorilla, a silverback gorilla. Yes, although it has become a silverback gorilla now, it dares not move at this time. Because at the moment when Zumengyo screamed, several female bodyguards who were responsible for the protection of the villa rushed over with guns and directly surrounded the gorilla. They knew the horror of this creature and knew that they were useless, but they rushed up subconsciously. Of course, this is not the end. With just a few people, the gorilla would not dare to move. What really made it afraid to move were the other two behemoths that rushed up from the side. The white tiger lying in the nest in the villa and teasing his son, and the cheese lying in an unknown place, rushed to the battlefield within a second. And it rushed out in a full combat posture. Because it ran a little too fast, the white tiger, whose size was not much worse than that of the gorilla, directly overturned the rockery on one side of the villa. It swore that it really just rubbed it lightly, who knew that the rockery would be torn into pieces. Of course, no one paid attention to this now. The few people in the field were completely confused by the sudden scene. Including Kinzu and Zumengyo, they were all a little confused. The responsible female bodyguards were holding their guns, not knowing which one to aim at. Because in their opinion, these three big guys who suddenly appeared could threaten the safety of Kinzu and the others. Okay, Elsa, you guys come over first. After a moment of stunned, Kinzu quickly called the female bodyguards among the giant beasts. How about it, wife, do you still want to watch? Kinzu was sweating in his heart, looking at Zumengyo with a dazed expression in his arms. No wonder the ancients said that beauty is a disaster. It hasn't happened yet, and another war almost broke out. If the gorilla hadn't been dealt with before and was a little timid now, they would definitely have fought directly from the beginning. Okay, change back, it's not good to scare people. Noticing a lot of noise coming from the back of the villa, Kinzu quickly signaled the big guys to turn into small guys again. Just when the guys just turned small, Kinzu's cell phone rang. He took it out and saw that it was indeed Lin Yu's phone. Clean, what's wrong? I heard a little noise here just now. Nothing, just a few little guys playing around. Kinzu touched his nose a little unnaturally, but in his heart he cursed this black silk glasses girl half to death. This damn girl seemed to know that Kinzu didn't dare to do anything to her. I don't know how many times she has teased him openly and secretly these days. Oh, that's good. After laughing twice, Lin Yu's tone suddenly became a little cheerful, and asked, Clean, when do you have time to come and take a look? The project here is almost finished. So soon? Kinzu raised his wrist to check the time. It's not even a month since they started working again. Is it over so soon? Of course, you'll know when you come and take a look. Lin Yu's tone was very sure. Okay, then I'll go and take a look this afternoon. Nodding, Kinzu didn't think much about it and hung up the phone directly. He was afraid that the girl would say something ambiguous on the phone again, and he wouldn't be able to explain it clearly at the time. You know, he is hugging the beautiful Zhu now. How is it, wife, are you not scared? After putting the phone away, Kinzu tightened his arms again, and also woke up Zumengyo who was a little dazed. After coming back to her senses, the beautiful Zhu let out a long breath, and looked at Kinzu with a complicated look in her eyes. Hubby, tell me the truth, which planet are you from? Is it because your planet is going to invade the Earth, so they asked you to be the vanguard? ... Chapter 932 Who is in charge? In the early morning, under the call of the fiery red sunlight, the sleeping Tycoon ranch began to wake up gradually. After being locked up for a night, they urgently needed a good run to release the energy accumulated in their bodies. However, this would be a bit hard for the cowboys. Gee, a strong shout came from the green pasture, as if it indicated that some danger was approaching. However, when you get closer, you will find that it was just a few cowboys galloping in the pasture that was one person deep. Among the cowboys who were galloping on their horses, Locke, who was behind, suddenly looked at his companions. Hey, Little John, I heard that you were going to be promoted. What? Little John, who was a little dazed, didn't come back to his senses for a while. Hey, man, don't you know yet? Locke glanced at this guy with some disbelief and said with envy, I heard that the boss is going to promote you. Well, it's not certain yet. He shook his head. Although he said it was not certain, the smile on Little John's face could not be concealed. TSK, what is there to be uncertain about? Locke pouted, slowed down the horse, and said with a smile, only when Eva went to study in the whole ranch. Even if Eva comes to manage the ranch in the future, you must move up. Maybe. Being directly exposed by his friends, Little John did not quibble anymore. Because in his opinion, what Locke said made sense. If the boss did not want him to manage the ranch, he would not have deliberately asked him to continue to study in college. Not only here, the same conversation was also in full swing on the soft big bed in the villa bedroom. Honey, are you really going to let that guy manage the ranch? Nestled in Clean Zhu's arms, the beautiful Zhu said worriedly. He's not the loyal type like Eva, nor is he like old John who has worked on the ranch for decades. What if he embezzles money? Don't we still have you? Clean Zhu waved his hand indifferently at Zhu Mengyo's worried look. Little John is at most a ranch supervisor. I'm going to leave all the financial affairs to you. Ah? Me? Zhu Mengyo raised her little head in astonishment, and her expression was a little bitter. Didn't we agree to set up a law firm? Why should the financial affairs be handed over to me? Do I have to take the accountant's certificate? Ha, wife, don't worry, how can I leave everything to you alone? Seeing Zhu Mengyo's frightened look, Qin Zhu smiled and hugged her tighter. Isn't there Eva? I'm going to let her take care of the finances. Well, is that so? Looking at Qin Zhu thoughtfully, the beautiful lady's voice was drawn out, as if she understood something, and the expression on her little face was a little gloomy. What's wrong? Are you unhappy? Pinching the beautiful lady's small nose, Qin Zhu said with an unchanged smile. Just let her help manage it. Isn't the financial power of our family still in your hands? That's a nice thing to say. Zhu Mengyo pouted her little mouth. Although she was a little dissatisfied, she didn't say anything else, but pressed her body closer to Qin Zhu. It seemed that only in this way could she feel a little sense of security. It is said that humans are forgetful animals, and this is absolutely true. Although less than a month has passed, Qin Zhu has gradually forgotten what happened in the mountains when the princess and child did not take any action. Oh, no, it can't be said that it has been forgotten. At least, the sudden slumber of the system brought him a lot of discomfort. But there is no way to adapt. According to the system, I am full now and need to digest it, so host, please don't come to me recently. Of course, even if you come to me, I can't hear you. Fortunately, it was just the system that went to sleep, and the basic functions were still there, otherwise Qin Zhu would be a little panicked. However, from this incident, he also saw a big problem of his own. That is, his dependence on the system is too serious. In short, as long as there is a problem, the first thing he thinks of is not how to solve it himself, but to ask the system first to see if there is any way. So, even if he is a little uncomfortable, Qin Zhu thinks this is a good thing. But, those are secondary. Now his main problem is to send Eva and Little John to Montana State University, a university on the west coast that is specially open for cowboys and ranchers, for further study and training. Okay, we should get up, we have things to do today. Patting the soft body of the beauty, Qin Zhu climbed out of bed reluctantly. Perhaps, the reason why he was so happy and didn't want to leave was also closely related to this gentle place. When the two of them finished washing and went downstairs, they found that there were quite a few people sitting in the living room. Eva, Dale, Xingxiu and Qin Ru. Well, Qin Zhu didn't find these strange. What surprised him was that on the other side of Eva, there was actually Lin Yu sitting in a beige women's professional suit. Miss Lin, what are you doing? Qin Zhu had a headache when he saw this girl for the first time. There was no way, he couldn't flirt with her, and he couldn't drive her away. Fortunately, Miss Zhu had a good temper, otherwise, with this girl's behavior, she would have become a clown. Lin, she came to see me off. Seeing Qin Zhu coming down, Eva, who already knew the inside story, was afraid that Lin Yu would do something weird again, so she stood up quickly. It's okay, sit down, everyone. After waving his hand with a smile and motioning the people who stood up to sit down again, Qin Zhu said a little embarrassedly, I didn't expect you to come so early, little sister, you didn't even go up to call me when the guests came. As he said that, Qin Zhu also glared at Qin Ru, who looked innocent. Who else could she take the blame for this? I. Qin Ru opened her mouth and wanted to say, what if I went up to call you? Aren't you still hesitating? But looking at Qin Zhu's threatening eyes, thinking that her future pocket money would be in the hands of this back brother, Qin Ru curled her lips helplessly and took the blame. Thinking of her own pocket money, Qin Ru felt wronged and wanted to cry. It was clearly her sister-in-law who called to let her play for 2 more days, but this back brother just confiscated all her pocket money. Alas, don't they say that after marriage, the sister-in-law is the head of the family? Could it be that this is because they haven't gotten married yet? Si est escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas, significat lo descarga and y subir en sinisfuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas all encontrás la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas incredibles. Chapter 933. Hit the gunpoint. After Kinzu and the other person hurriedly had breakfast, they went to Boston together. After all, they were going to school, so they had to prepare something. Ahem, although they were a little older, according to the little girl Kinru, once they entered the school, they were students, and age had nothing to do with them. There was no way, they couldn't get rid of the little girl, so they had to go to Boston together. But it was also good, Kinzu hadn't been out of the ranch for a long time, and it was just right for him to go out for a walk with Xiumengyo. Night the 15th, under Dale's skillful control, soon arrived at the commercial district in Boston's Back Bay. After she found a place and parked the car, they walked towards the commercial street together. Wow, brother, there are so many people here. Walking on the streets of Boston where people were constantly flowing, the little girl couldn't help but exclaimed a few times. After coming to the United States for so long, this was the first time she saw so many people. There was no way, Kinzu didn't go out, and she naturally had no chance to go out. Even if Msayu took her out from time to time, they mostly went to the small place of Revere, where there wouldn't be too many people anyway. A lively and cheerful girl like Kinru likes this kind of bustling and crowded place the most, because it feels particularly lively and doesn't give people a dead feeling. Looking at the excitement of the little sister, Kinzu felt that he seemed to be a little incompetent. The little sister has been here for so long, but he didn't think of taking her out for a stroll, and he was worried about the princess doing something weird all day. Well, it's not the first time he feels this way, he's a little used to it. Shrugging his shoulders, Kinzu smiled and took the little sister's hand, and with the other hand he put his arm around the beautiful Xiu's waist. Accompanied by several women and under the envious eyes of a group of men, they came to the commercial district of Hawaii. Kinzu himself estimated that if ice could kill, he would have died at least 30 times. There's no way, maybe accompanying a beautiful woman shopping will only be scolded and another flower stuck in cow dung. But if you go shopping with several stunning beauties, it's not just as simple as being called cow dung. Moreover, the biggest difference between foreigners and Chinese people is that they are not ignorant of being subtle. Kinzu is now looking at the greasy-haired and powdered young man in front of him and is very unhappy. Maybe it's because he is not interested in oriental beauties, or because Dale and Erica have a cold expression. So, this young man locked his target on Eva, who looks more like a big sister next door. Hi, beautiful lady, I wonder if I have the honor to go with you. The white man, wearing a meat suit, tie, and polished leather shoes, who looks like an insurance salesman more than a young man, stopped in front of the somewhat stunned Eva with a smirk on his face. What if I say no? Before Kinzu could react, Dale, who was standing next to him, took out a small pistol from his arms, which was as shiny as the white man's big black leather shoes, and pressed it against his temple. If you don't want this place to become a bursting watermelon, you'd better get out of here, right now. You, as if he had never experienced such a scene before, the white man's white face became even whiter, his legs began to tremble, and his voice trembled so much that he couldn't speak. Ding, ding, it has to be said that the efficiency of American police is still very high. In other words, the public security in the commercial district has always been the most important thing for American police. As soon as the gun was taken out, the two short and fat policemen in charge of patrolling over there took out their pistols and surrounded them at a speed that was seriously inconsistent with their body shape. Dude, put down your weapons and squat on the ground for inspection. An elderly policeman warned loudly with a somewhat uneven breath. Mr. Officer, please don't be so nervous. Shrugging his shoulders, Kinzu raised his hands and exclaimed, my bodyguard just thinks this guy threatens my safety. You know, strangers are very scary now. Bodyguard. The old policeman muttered in confusion, and his expression relaxed a little, but he still didn't put down the gun in his hand. Do you have a gun license? Of course. Kinzu didn't think much about it. He let go of the hand that was holding the beautiful Xiu. In Dale's surprised eyes, he reached into her arms and took out the gun license. So soft and warm. After taking his hand out, Kinzu felt that he seemed to have done something remarkable. He actually molested his female bodyguard in public on the street. Fortunately, what made Kinzu breathe a sigh of relief was that Zumengyu and the others were all paying attention to the police and the white man. and Erica stood in front of them to protect them, so she didn't notice the situation here. However, what he didn't notice was that there was a woman who had been paying attention to him from the beginning. That woman was Ling Yu. After seeing Qin Zhu's retracted salty pig hand, the corner of the glasses girl's mouth hung a slightly sarcastic smile. Sure enough, this playboy. Okay, you're fine. After taking the gun license and looking at it with some caution, the old policeman's expression finally relaxed. After signaling his companions to put down their guns, he glanced at Qin Zhu and the others and said with some dissatisfaction, "Although you were right, you should pay attention to your impact in public places next time. This can easily cause chaos." "I'm sorry, I'll be careful next time." Shrugging his shoulders, Qin Zhu was helpless in the face of such a dedicated old policeman. Seeing that the police were about to leave, the white man who was still pointed at by Dale with a gun almost cried, "Hey, man, didn't you see? They are going to kill me." "I'm sorry, man." The old policeman turned around and was very dissatisfied with the attitude of this guy, so he pretended to be innocent and said, "They haven't started yet. As long as they start, I can arrest them immediately." "You?" Facing the old policeman's words that were obviously teasing him, the white man's face turned red with anger, but he didn't dare to get angry casually. What if this crazy woman got into trouble and shot him directly? Then his second half of his life would be wasted. Thinking of this, the white man finally recognized the reality and pleaded in a low voice, "Mr. Policeman, someone is threatening a law-abiding taxpayer with a gun. Aren't you going to do anything about it?" "Oh, really?" Blinking in confusion, the old policeman looked at Qin Zhu again. "Did you threaten him? How is that possible?" Qin Zhu waved his hands quickly and said with a smile, "Mr. Policeman, it was this guy who bumped into the muzzle of my bodyguard's gun. How can you blame us?" Chapter 934 The Guy Who Doesn't Want to Give Up. Okay, since this matter is clear, let's not continue to argue here." Qin Zhu smiled and waved his hand. "Everyone should disperse quickly and stop arguing here." After hearing these words from Qin Zhu, the slightly hunched old policeman seemed to not want to continue to cause trouble here, so he asked the onlookers to disperse. However, the foreign white man next to him did not give up. Maybe it was because he felt that he was a little embarrassed at this time, and he had already felt that the old policeman seemed to be biased towards Qin Zhu and his group. "Mr. Policeman, you can't be so mean. How can you help these fat pigs from East Asia to bully our locals? Don't forget that we're of the same blood." Although he felt that the policeman was a little biased, the white man still stepped forward again and said to the old policeman in front of him, "Hurry up and arrest these people. You must not let them continue to be arrogant. They dared to take out their guns in public. This is clearly a terrorist act." His words really made Qin Zhu next to him feel a little bit amused. In fact, Qin Zhu didn't want to waste too much energy here. After all, what they have to do now is to have a good stroll here. The most important thing is to accompany Eva in front of him to stroll around this commercial street. But who would have thought that he would meet such an unreasonable person here, and he was a guy without any backbone. "Qin Zhu, why don't we leave here quickly? I don't want to continue arguing with this ugly guy. We haven't seen the small pendants in front yet. I just saw that the jewelry there is really beautiful. Why don't we see if there is any jewelry that suits us?" Maybe Eva couldn't stand it at this time. She felt that it was meaningless to stay here and argue endlessly. It was just a waste of time. So she hurried forward and said to Qin Zhu in front of her. While talking, she didn't forget to use her arm to gently touch and shake Qin Zhu's body, as if she was acting like a spoiled child to Qin Zhu in front of her. Qin Zhu felt a little guilty about Eva. After all, this woman was still in a state that couldn't be seen in the light. And he was the kind of person who wanted his woman to be the happiest one in the world, so he couldn't stand Eva's coquetry the most. Okay, since our Miss Eva has spoken, let's not continue arguing with these people. Anyway, this is not a big deal. It's obvious that this guy is taking the initiative to take advantage of us. After saying that, Qin Zhu did not forget to blink at Eva in front of him, as if the two of them were communicating with their eyes. This scene was clearly seen by Dale and Erica on the side. Seeing this, Dale frowned slightly and looked at Zhu Mengyu on the side, feeling a little uneasy. She felt that Qin Zhu was getting bolder and bolder. He actually flirted with his sister in front of Zhu Mengyu. But she had no choice now. There were so many people here, and she couldn't ask the two to be more careful. Mr. Police, I'm really sorry. We really can't stay here. Although we are not from your country, we still admire your culture very much. We just want to integrate into the exchanges between China and the West. I don't want to cause too much trouble here, Qinzu said to the old policeman in front of him with a positive and sincere attitude. After all, the old policeman is the main person in charge of handling this case here. If he leaves a good impression on the middle-aged uncle in front of him, then he doesn't have to waste too much time here. After hearing the words of Qinzu in front of him, the old policeman in front of him nodded slightly. Then he was still playing with the baton in his hand skillfully, as if the baton in his hand was his own weapon. You also saw that I have a gun license just now, and I am not a so-called illegal private teacher, so the white man in front of me is clearly making excuses here. Qinzu's attitude also seemed very sincere. While explaining to the old policeman in front of him with a smile, he turned his head excitedly to look at the white man not far away. Okay, since this matter is very clear, you should hurry up and do your own things. After all, everyone is very irritable. Welcome to our capital to enjoy various beautiful scenery. Although our culture is not as profound as your Chinese culture, it also has some merits. Maybe because the old policeman in front of him was very kind to Qinzu, he did not continue to embarrass him, and just said to Qinzu in front of him very easily. After that, he did not forget to promote the culture of his country. And these also make Qinzu in front of him feel a little bitter. Then Qinzu took Eva next to him and continued to stroll forward. I didn't expect that people in their country would act so rogue so frequently. They are clearly making excuses here. Fortunately, we brought two people with equal strength in advance, otherwise we might really be bullied by the white man today. When Qinzu and Eva in front of him walked forward, Eva may have not come out of the irritation just now, so she kept nagging Qinzu next to her. After hearing Eva's words, Qinzu smiled slightly. Okay, don't continue to act like a big lady here. This matter is not as complicated as we think. Just do your own thing peacefully. Qinzu took advantage of Zhu Mengyo's inattention and caressed Eva's hair inadvertently, and then said this to him in extremely gentle words. The tenderness between men and women revealed in Qinzu's eyes made Eva have no immunity to his gaze. It seemed that Eva at this time had completely fallen into Qinzu's gentle land. Chapter 935 Small Ornament. Then, they came to the bustling street market in front. The crowd in this street seemed a bit crowded, but the goods next to it were still dazzling, which made Qinzu and Zhu Mengyo next to them a little dazzled. Husband, do you think this jewelry is beautiful? Just as Qinzu and his friends walked forward, this silly girl suddenly came to a small store in front of them, and then picked up a small necklace that looked sparkling, and asked Qinzu in front of her. After saying that, she didn't forget to wink at Lao Wang, and her expression seemed very shy. After seeing Zhu Mengyo's appearance in front of him, Qinzu just felt a little bitter. It seems that Zhu Mengyo has grasped Qinzu's weakness and knows that as long as she acts a little coquettishly to her boyfriend, he will have no immunity. Ha, as long as my girlfriend likes it, then we can buy it. Anyway, we can have a good time here this time. I don't know when we can come here next time. Qinzu stepped forward and said this to the girl Zhu Mengyo in front of him. In fact, Qinzu did not notice the eyes of the girl even next to him at this time. She seemed to look a little depressed. Maybe she was touched by Qinzu's words just now, but Qinzu focused all his attention on the girl Zhu Mengyo at this time, and he didn't care about the expression of Eva not far away. When will brother Qinzu be able to treat me with such a gentle expression? When will he be so gentle and kind to me in front of outsiders? I don't know when I can be with Qinzu openly. Zhu Mengyo kept thinking in her heart, feeling that she seemed a little unhappy at this time. Because he felt that he was completely ignored. After all, every girl needs a clear sense of existence in her heart. Only this pure feeling can make them feel their own value. But at this moment, Qinzu focused his attention on his girlfriend. Boss, how much is this small pendant? Qinzu ended up to the owner of the small stall and asked, and his tone of voice seemed very kind. Ha, it seems that you really have a good eye. This pendant is our local specialty. It is handmade by our locals, and this is a bracelet that has been prayed to the heaven. It is full of our inner expectations. The bosses of these small vendors also seem to be very flexible. He could see at a glance that Zhu Mengyo in front of him was particularly fond of it. So he introduced it to Qinzu in front of him with high spirits, and even praised the small pendant in his hand to him. This made Qinzu feel a little bitter, but he could understand it. After all, it was like this in business occasions. It was just that if he said it, you would just ignore it. Hey, boss, don't introduce it here. We just think your bracelet is more beautiful. You should quickly quote its price. Qinzu said to the owner of the small stall in front of him. However, after hearing these words of Qinzu, The owner of the small store in front of him just felt a little embarrassed, and then scratched his head. In fact, the things sold in our small stores here are very cheap, but the workmanship of the jewelry in your hand is more delicate, and it contains other meanings that are richer. The small boss said to Kinzu in front of him. Since this little beauty in front of you likes it so much, then we will give you a 15% discount today. You only need to pay 85% of its original price. The owner of the stall pretended to be very reluctant and said to Kinzu in front of him, but Kinzu and the others knew that this was just a routine. Moreover, Kinzu never cared about the money. As long as he could make the woman around him happy, it would be fine. Ha ha ha, since Zumengyo likes it so much, then we will buy it for her. The boss lady will find us 3 identical ones and pack them up. They must be 3 identical ones. Don't find me those shoddy things here. I will come back to find you when the time comes. Kinzu said to the little boss in front of him righteously, and Kinzu's words also made the others around him very confused. Especially the girl Zumengyo next to him. He didn't know what was going on with his husband today. The owner of the small store in front of him was just a little happy at this time, and his eyes were narrowed into a line. Ha ha ha, it seems that the boss is really a person who knows what he is doing. Since you asked for 3 identical ones at once, I will definitely pick out the best ones for you. You wait here. The boss of the small vendor said to Kinzu in front of him enthusiastically, and then ran to the small warehouse behind him. Honey, why did you suddenly ask for 3 small pendants? I don't need so many. Zumengyo next to him asked Kinzu in front of him with a confused look on her face. I don't know what Kinzu is up to. Wife, we can't be so selfish. We have 3 other girls here to take care of. Don't forget that we are here to send Eva to school today. How can I only buy it for you and ignore them? What's more, my sister is also a little girl, and you happen to like this kind of small pendant. Kinzu pretended to be mysterious and laid beside Zumengyo's ear, and then whispered to Zumengyo in front of him. The tone of his speech seemed very young, but also very serious. Originally, Zumengyo didn't know what was going on, but when she saw Kinzu's mysterious expression, she seemed to feel that what he said did make sense. So she nodded slightly, and when she saw that her girlfriend had agreed with her approach, Kinzu felt secretly happy. Chapter 936. On the verge of breaking out. It seems that this girl is easy to please. I still need to communicate with Zumengyo in front of me in the future. After all, girls like this are easy to please. Everything should be done according to their wishes. Kinzu thought to himself. He felt that he was really smart at this time. He not only took Zumengyo's feelings into consideration without knowing anything. He could also buy a small gift for his lover, Eva, who was standing not far away. This was simply killing 2 birds with 1 stone. He even began to sigh at his smart mind. Eva, don't stand there stupidly. Go up and see if there is a pendant you like. Although I bought the same one as Zumengyo, I'm afraid you don't like it. Kinzu went up to Eva in front of him and asked her this question. After he finished speaking, he did not forget to wink at her with his peripheral vision. Although the moment when Kinzu blinked was very short, and it was gone in just a moment, it was still caught by Eva in front of him. She also knew that Kinzu in front of her was still thinking about her. She had originally felt a little disappointed, but at this moment her heart was also relaxed, and then she hurried forward and nodded slightly to Kinzu. The feeling of loss just now was swept away, and then Kinzu bought 3 identical pendants in one go. He didn't know why Eva would buy the same one as Zumengyo. But these were the thoughts of some girls, and Kinzu certainly couldn't catch them. Then they continued to walk forward. Why do I feel there is some dangerous atmosphere around here? Is there someone ambushing us here? Just as Kinzu was walking forward with his wife Zumengyo, Dale, who was walking behind her, frowned and said to everyone. Although the voice was very low, it could make people feel depressed. Although Dale was a woman, as a bodyguard, she must keep an eye on all directions and listen to all directions. She must ensure the safety of everyone. Moreover, they are now outside China, and the situation outside is also very chaotic, so they may fall into danger if they are not careful. When hearing the tone of Dale's words, Zumengyo next to him subconsciously moved closer to Kinzu's arms, as if she was seeking Kinzu's protection at this time. After seeing his girlfriend's weak and helpless appearance, Kinzu felt a little bit of a wry smile. It seems that this girl is indeed very insecure. Okay, don't be afraid here. I'm Kinzu. I don't care if there's an ambush or something like that. I will never let anyone hurt you. Don't forget that we have this powerful bodyguard next to us. Kinzu stroked Zhu Mengyo's hair in front of him, and then said this to her in extremely gentle words. Although Kinzu's tone of voice was very firm at this time, he was indeed a little nervous in his heart. After all, the outside world is not much friendlier than China, and there must be a little chaos outside. Miss Dell, why don't you look around and see if there's something wrong with your feeling? Don't have the illusion that everything is an enemy here. We have to calm out and relax today. Kinzu said to Dell in front of him with a serious face. Although Dell was usually nervous and particularly sensitive, and her sixth sense was also very accurate, Kinzu still didn't want them to be ambushed here. Because he felt that he didn't have any clear enemies now, and there was no need for him to encounter danger here. After hearing Kinzu's words, the girl Dell nodded slightly, and then frowned and looked around. Just when the atmosphere became very depressing, they suddenly found a group of people coming around. These people looked very arrogant, and their walking postures were very high, which made Kinzu feel dangerous. It seems that Dell's illusion is really accurate. This group of people must be walking towards us with ill intentions. I want to see what these guys want to do. At this time, Kinzu couldn't help but think in his heart, because he knew that these people in front of him must be ill-intentioned. Then Kinzu hugged Zhu Mengyo tightly in his arms. And Eva next to him seemed to feel a little scared, so she also dodged behind Kinzu. Maybe at this time, they felt that Kinzu's side was the safest place. Ha ha ha, you guys are awesome, don't you think you can be so arrogant just because the dead policeman was protecting you? Just when the atmosphere here with Kinzu and his group became very depressing, the man in front of him laughed loudly, and then walked towards Kinzu with a big step. At first, because he was walking behind, Kinzu and his group didn't see the existence of this person at all, but when he walked in front, Kinzu recognized who he was. It turned out that this was the white man who had just had an argument with him. This made Kinzu feel very unhappy, because he already knew that these people must be here to take revenge. It seems that these guys are really petty. I didn't want to cause trouble outside, but why are these people so difficult to deal with? Kinzu thought to himself, and then he took 2 steps back. After all, Dale was a professional bodyguard, so when he saw these people come in, he stood directly in front of Kinzu and put his hand on his waist, because she had a small pistol on her waist. If an emergency situation really occurs, Dale can take out his weapon in the first time. He can make a fighting posture in the shortest time. Chapter 937 Provocation. It seems that there will be some unnecessary friction soon. These guys are really annoying. I don't understand why they are looking for trouble on the street when they're full. Kinzu said secretly in his heart. It's better to find some girls to play with. It seems that these people are really brainless guys. At this time, Kinzu felt very irritated. He didn't want to appear in such a situation outside, because he didn't have so much time to spend on these stupid people. He felt that he wanted to go up and beat these people up, but he also knew that these people were not good people. They must have some weapons like guns on their waists. After all, there was some friction between them just now. They couldn't just let it go. The scene became serious directly. No one said anything, just looked at each other. I didn't expect you to be so powerful, little girl. If you hadn't been standing here just now, I might have beaten up your master. Just when the scene became very depressing, the sloppy white man standing in the front walked up to Dale in front of him and said this, and his tone of voice was very disdainful. It seemed that he didn't take Kinzu's bodyguard seriously at all, and he didn't forget to tease the bodyguard. Don't continue to interfere with my serious work here. I don't want to do something indecent on your little face. Your little face is so beautiful. He said this and walked directly towards Dale in front of him. His action made Kinzu feel particularly unhappy. After all, Dale was his bodyguard. Although he had no extravagant thoughts about the bodyguard in front of him, how could Dale be teased by the white man in front of him? This was as cruel as a flower being teased by a pig. I advise you to disappear from my sight quickly and don't make trouble here, otherwise don't blame me for being rude to you. When seeing the white man in front of her walking towards her, Dale did not take out the gun from her waist. Maybe she thought it was not time to draw the gun and confront them. After all, if the gun was taken out, it might make the atmosphere here extremely tense. After all, the gun and ammunition had been taken out, so a fight might be inevitable. And this Dale is not the kind of person who stirs up trouble. His main purpose is to protect the safety of his master. So he said coldly to the white man in front of him, as if to warn him, but the white man in front of him did not take Shaolei's words to heart at all. Maybe he felt that he had brought enough people with him. Not bad, not bad. I didn't expect you, a woman, to be so brave. but you may become my possession at the time. Do you really think you were a piece of onion? The white man whistled at Dale in front of him, and then said to her in such a rampant way, "Why don't you ask what my identity is in this area of dozens of miles? When have I been humiliated like today?" But before everyone could react, the white man in front of him actually took out a small pistol from his waist, and it seemed that there was a silencer installed in front of his gun. His action scared Qinzhou, who was not far away. Moreover, the girls next to Qinzhou also hurriedly dodged towards Qinzhou, as if they felt that Qinzhou was the safest place at this time. TMD, it seems that this guy is deliberately trying to cause trouble here today. I really don't know who he is. He actually dared to point a gun at my bodyguard. It seems that I have to teach him a lesson today. At this time, Qinzhou hurriedly hugged the girls next to him. Although his Eva was embarrassed to hug her in front of his girlfriend Zumengyo, he still used his body to block Eva as before. He just didn't want his lover to be hurt here. At this time, he was only holding his girlfriend Zumengyo and his sister in his arms. Although the white man pulled out the gun very quickly, the Dale in front of him was not a pushover. After all, he is Qinzhou's professional bodyguard. He must have experienced such scenes many times, and he may have been trained professionally. So at the moment when the white man took out his gun, he had already taken out the pistol in his arms, and then inadvertently pointed it at the white man's lower abdomen. I advise you to put your gun away quickly, and then pat your butt and get out of here quickly. Don't force me to do it here. Dale in front of him said to him coldly, and he was afraid that his hand would directly pull the trigger. He didn't even install the safety on the gun, as if he had made up his mind to die with the white man in front of him. The scene now fell into depression again. Everyone held their breath, but Dale standing in the distance was calm and composed, probably because these things were commonplace for a professional bodyguard like him. "Boss, you go first, I'll deal with these guys first," Dale said to Qinzhou and the others behind him, because he knew that he and the white man in front of him would not be able to solve the problem so easily. She didn't want her boss to make any mistakes here, so leaving here now was the best option. He asked his boss to leave not because he was afraid of the guy in front of him, but because he didn't want to be distracted by protecting his boss and his group. Chapter 938. An accidental discharge of a gun. Forget it, let's leave here quickly. We must not let Dale be distracted by us here. Although Qinzhou knew that it would be a bit unkind for him to leave with his group of people now. But he also knew that it would be useless for him to stay here, and it would leave Dale distracted. After all, the situation seemed very serious to others, and it was impossible to let them go. There would be a fierce battle next. Under this premise, he had to settle the women beside him. "Why don't you retreat to the back block first? I'll go help Dale first." Just when Qinzhou was about to retreat with the group of people beside him, Erica, who was standing beside him without saying anything, suddenly came over and said to Qinzhou in front of him, and her tone of voice seemed very serious. Maybe it was because she felt that if Dale was left alone to confront the white people in front of her, it would seem a bit too snobbish and weak. After all, the other side had many guns, and they were also a combination of the old, weak, sick and disabled. "Well, you two must be careful, and you must not confront them too early. I will settle the girls next to me first, and then I will come to help you," Qinzhou said to Erica in front of him seriously, and after that, he did not forget to look at Dale not far away. TND, I should have brought more bodyguards next time I went out, otherwise I really wouldn't have to waste so much energy. Qinzhou couldn't help but sigh in his heart. After all, he had so many bodyguards at home to protect his safety, but today he planned to stroll around the block casually, so he didn't think the problem was so serious. But who would have thought that when he met this group of white bastards, he would be so serious and really have to fight with them to the death. This made Qinzhou feel a little miserable. Then, Qinzhou took the women beside him and walked towards the block, leaving Dale and Erica to stare at the white man. "You stay here quietly first, but you must not run around here. Wait until I solve the problem here for him and then you can come out. Don't run around before I come," Qinzhou said to the people around him, and his tone of speech was very firm, and at the same time, there was some tenderness in his tone. After all, these three women are very important to Qinzhou. He doesn't want these three girls to have any accidents, but this kind of shooting is not something these women can do. They can't compare with Erica and Dale. They are professional bodyguards, but these women are just some housewives. After Qinzhou settled the women around him, he walked towards Dale and the others with big strides. Bang! 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 Just as Qinzhou quickened his pace and walked forward, he suddenly heard a burst of rapid gunfire from the direction of Dale and the others. This made Kinzu's heart rise to his throat. He knew that Dale and the others might have exchanged fire with the men in white. Damn, are you kidding me? How can these guys be so impatient? They actually used some of their guns and ammunition in broad daylight. Do they really think this is a war era? At this time, Kinzu just felt a little bitter. He didn't expect that the gang would be so rampant and start using some guns and ammunition to fight against him in public. Then he quickened his pace. At this time, he only saw that Dale and Erica dodged behind the wall, and then pulled their pistols in their hands. What is the situation now? What kind of firepower configuration do they have? Kinzu did not exchange too many polite words with the two bodyguards in front of him. After all, now is not the time to gossip here. They should try their best to solve the crisis in front of them. Although the power of Kinzu and his side is a little weak, Kinzu is not a weak and incompetent person. He has a stubborn temper. The more others bully him, the more Kinzu will fight with them to the end. What's more, the combat strength of the two bodyguards in front of him is also very strong. Although they look like girls, their combat strength is far above those old American soldiers. There seem to be more than 10 of them. They seem to be equipped with rifles and pistols like ours. But don't worry, boss. We will definitely suppress their firepower, and they should not dare to fight with us too much here. After all, we're in the street now. After hearing Kinzu's questions, Dale, who was standing in the front, said this to Kinzu in front of him with a serious face, as if introducing the emergency situation in front to him. After hearing Dale's introduction, Kinzu sighed deeply. He didn't expect such a good day to be completely ruined by a few little bastards. He originally wanted to take his harem to have a good time, but he never thought that such an accident would happen. So he wanted to stick his head out to see what the other party was, but when Kinzu just stuck his head out, he suddenly heard the sound of a bullet above his head, which frightened Kinzu so much that he quickly retracted his head again. Damn, these guys are really going too far. They are actually pressing me step by step. I originally wanted to solve the problem with them peacefully, but it seems that they're really shameless. Kinzu was already a little angry at this time, so he picked up the pistol in his hand and kept shooting at the other side of the alley. Then there was a burst of rapid bullet sounds all around. Although the sound was not loud, it seemed very dense. Chapter 939. The police arrive. Bang! 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 A series of gunshots rang out, immediately triggering a series of screams. After all, it was a downtown area. Although Americans were used to gunshots, the gunshots heard in the downtown area were still rare. Boss, why don't you go first? Dale carefully poked his head out to take a look at the situation, turned around and said to Kinzu, "The other side has a lot of people. Although Erica and I can handle it, we can't guarantee your safety. No, I want to see what these guys want to do." Waving his hand, Kinzu stopped Dale from saying what he wanted to say next. He knew very well that a gunfight in the downtown area would never last too long. Not only would the police not allow it, but the nearby businesses would also protest. If a tragedy happened here, would they still be able to make a sound in the future? Kinzu's estimate was correct. At the moment the gunshots rang out, the entire Boston Police Department was in chaos. What? A gunfight in the back bay? What do patrolmen do? Get out now, quick. What? Triple X called to complain. I want to complain too. Who can I go to? Quick, call the rapid response team, send the helicopters out immediately. I want them to deal with this gang of thugs within 5 minutes. As roars came from various offices, the entire Boston Police Department seemed to be injected with chicken blood and immediately started to operate at high speed. Woo-la woo-la, the shrill sirens resounded throughout the Back Bay area, making the white man's face even uglier. Powell has been in Boston for so many years. When has he ever been bullied like this? Even a little policeman patrolling the streets dared to glare at him. Well, although this is also related to the fact that he is in contact with upper-class people, it still makes him feel very embarrassed. Buzz buzz buzz, before he could figure out what to do, a familiar roar came from a distance, and it was getting closer and closer. Fuck, how come these bastards came so fast? Grabbing the weapon from the bodyguard beside him, Powell waved it and tried to rush up. Quick, you must deal with them before the police arrive. Da. What answered him was not the response of the bodyguards, but the large caliber heavy machine gun on the helicopter. Although this is different from the Black Hawk that Kinzu modified himself, a machine gun is a machine gun, and its power cannot be compared with ordinary pistols and rifles. Fuck, are they crazy? Powell, who was pulled back by the bodyguard, looked at the concrete floor in front of him that was beaten into dice by bullets with some shock, and felt aggrieved in his heart. "Master, something is wrong, let's retreat first." Looking at the special police who quickly slid down from the helicopter, one of Powell's bodyguards suggested nervously. Snap. After a crisp slap, Powell's hysterical roar resounded through the sky. "Fuck, what did you say? Retreat first? Are you kidding me?" Although he was slapped, the bodyguard leader looked as if he was used to it. He waved his hand calmly, and two bodyguards came up from behind, carried Powell and walked out. The bodyguard leader knew very well what kind of person his young master was. If he was not carried away, and something happened to him when he was taken to the police station, it would not be as simple as a slap in the face. But things often don't develop as people imagine. Just as several bodyguards were carrying Powell, who was yelling and cursing, and were about to retrieve to the car across the street, a series of police cars rushed over. Go. 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 As a group of burly American policemen arrived at the scene with all kinds of the latest submachine guns, it meant that this farce had finally come to an end. Damn it, this bastard should be shot dead. Kinzu put away his pistol and cursed at Powell, who was being escorted into the police car. "Okay, boss, you'd better think about how we can get out of this." Shrugging, Dale raised his hands above his head, turned around and lay on the wall. What? Kinzu didn't come back to his senses for a while, and was a little confused by Dale's sudden action. Does this mean he wants to enter from behind? Fuck, quick, put the gun down, and lie on the wall with your head in your hands, now, right now. A somewhat rough roar suddenly came from behind, and Kinzu completely understood what was going on. Okay. Kinzu raised his hands above his head helplessly and said with a wry smile, "Since when do even victims get treated like this? Don't talk nonsense, whether you were a victim or not is not up to you." With a cold snort, the American, who was obviously in a bad mood, directly choked back Kinzu's words. Okay. Shrugging helplessly, Kinzu could only pray that Zumengyu and the others would not be discovered, otherwise it would be a lot of fun. They finally came out to play, but they were wiped out in an instant. What he thought was what he wanted. Just as Kinzu finished his thought, he heard Eva's unique cry. "What are you doing? We didn't do anything." "Fuck, stop talking nonsense, someone saw you guys are in the same group, go away." As the voice came, Zumengyu, Eva, Linyu and her younger sister Kinru were pointed at by several white policemen and walked over. "Asshole." Kinzu got angry and turned around and grabbed the collar of the white policeman who had just scolded him. "If you don't want Nelson to talk to you in person, you'd better let them put their guns down for me." "Fuck you, her." Sudden attack by Kinzu, the policemen around him immediately aimed their guns at him, but were stopped in time by the white policeman. "You, no Chief Nelson." "What do you think?" Being pointed at by so many guns, Kinzu also felt that he was a little bit scared, and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. But in front of so many people, he couldn't just give in, so he snorted coldly and said angrily, "I not only know Nelson, but I also had dinner with your governor, Mr. Theodore. I thought the security in Boston was pretty good, but I didn't expect that you were a den of police and gangsters." "Oh, no, sir, you can't say that." Listening to Kinzu's sarcastic tone, the leading policeman almost broke out in a cold sweat. What is the most feared thing about being a policeman in the United States? It's not his superior, Chief Nelson, or the big boss, Governor Theodore. What they fear most is being involved in these black activities. If you offend your superiors and the governor, the worst case scenario is that you will not be a policeman. But if you are involved in these messes, you will never be able to wash it off for the rest of your life. Si est escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas, significat lo descarga and y subir en cines fuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas all encontrar la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas increíbles. Chapter 940 Surprised Nelson. "Sir, please come this way." After shrugging his shoulders and signaling the surrounding policemen to move their guns away, the leading white policeman made a gesture of invitation to Kinzu and the others. Unless there was an accident, no one wanted to lose their job, so he thought it was no big deal to be a little polite. "Wife, are you okay?" Ignoring the white policeman's changed expression, Kinzu quickly approached Zumengyu and looked her up and down with some concern. "Don't worry, nothing's wrong." Zhu Mengyo felt warm in her heart, but also a little embarrassed when Qin Zhu expressed his concern so openly in front of so many people. That's good, that's good. Qin Zhu breathed a sigh of relief and then looked at the other women. Don't worry, we're fine. As if she understood what Qin Zhu was worried about, Eva smiled brightly and said softly, although they are a little rude, they are very disciplined. Qin Zhu's worried look finally relaxed after hearing this, and he turned around and said with a smile, okay, let's go. Nodding, several people followed the leading policeman and walked to the police car parked on the side. HMPH, a stinky brother who values women over his sister. Qinru, who was frightened today, felt a little wronged when she saw that Qin Zhu ignored her after comforting the two sisters-in-law, and she grumbled in dissatisfaction. Ha, okay, your brother is upset now. Xing Xiaoyu, who was standing by, understood Qin Zhu's move very well. Although she felt a little disappointed that he didn't care about her, she couldn't help but feel a little happy when she saw that he even forgot about his own sister. Sister Xiaoyu, you only know how to speak for him. Qinru pouted her lips, glanced at the women around her, and muttered in a very childish voice. A playboy brother, I don't know how many girls' hearts he will break in the end. Shaura, what did you say? Xing Xiaoyu, who was thinking about her own things, didn't hear clearly for a moment, and couldn't help but ask curiously. No, nothing. After laughing twice, Qinru patted her little heart, feeling that her heartbeat was still a little faster. If the stinky brother knew that she sold him, I don't know if he would send her back home, so I'd better be careful. Well, I still have to be careful, talk less and watch more. After secretly giving herself a thumbs up in her heart, Qinru's cute little face couldn't help but show a few innocent smiles again. Okay, get out of the car. With a few sharp brake sounds, the police car stopped in front of the Boston police station. When Qin Zhu and his companions got off the car, they happened to meet Powell and his companions who were being escorted out of the police car by several policemen in a somewhat embarrassed manner. When Powell saw Qin Zhu and his companions getting off the police car with a relaxed look, he, who had been making a fuss all the way, immediately exploded. Fuck, why? Why don't you handcuff them? You dog-fed bastards, just wait. Fuck, be quiet, if you yell again, I will shoot you directly. The white policeman, who was a little annoyed for not putting Qin Zhu in handcuffs, roared and put his gun to his temple when he heard Powell's words. Looking at his ferocious expression, it seemed that if this guy dared to say another word, he would really dare to shoot. Staring at the white policeman with white eyes for a long time, Powell finally did not dare to say anything. It is true that he was a little impulsive, but he was not stupid. The cold touch on his temple told him that it was a real gun, and judging from the look of the policeman, he was definitely not trying to scare him. HMPH, damn guy, just wait for me. After glaring at the guy fiercely, Powell was pressed into the police station by the police without even turning his head. It seemed that he had forgotten about Qin Zhu and the others, and instead transferred all his hatred to the white policeman. Fuck, today is so unlucky. After spitting on the ground, the white policeman put away his pistol and looked at Qin Zhu and the others behind him with a bad temper, thinking that you'd better know Chief Nelson, otherwise I'll take care of you. As if to dispel the doubts in the white policeman's heart, just as his thoughts fell, he ran into Nelson who had just come out of the office and was about to check the situation. You know, a gunfight in the downtown area is no small matter. Moreover, with the speed of information dissemination in the current internet age, Boston may become famous in the world on today's evening news. Oh, God, Nelson, who had just turned the stairs, saw Qin Zhu, who was surrounded by several women and walked into the hall leisurely. He couldn't help but have a bad premonition in his heart. Clean, why are you here? Me? Qin Zhu shrugged helplessly. Chief Nelson, I didn't want to come, but your police officers forced me to come. This? Neil's head hurt when he heard it, and his eyes couldn't help but look at the white policeman. Needless to say, since this guy brought it back, there must be something wrong. Sure enough, seeing Nelson's eyes, the white policeman stepped forward, stood at attention and saluted. Chief, they are the other group of people in the gunfight in Hallway. After hesitating for a while, he still explained. But they said they were victims, so I didn't handcuff them. It's okay. Patting the guy on the shoulder, Nelson finally showed a smile on his face. It's okay that they are not the perpetrators. Spark, take someone to take the statement first. Qin and I will go upstairs to talk. As he said that, Nelson looked at Qin Zhu, and it was obvious that he wanted him to send someone to take the statement with the guy named Spark. Kinzu certainly understood this, so after a quick glance, he still said to Dale, "Dale, you go over there. You should know almost everything." "Okay, boss." Dale nodded readily. There was no reason to delay, so she followed Spark to the other side. "Clean, she will be back soon. Let's go to the lounge first." Looking at Kinzu's worried expression, Nelson smiled in understanding and pointed upstairs. "Well, it's been a long time since we last met. I really want to talk to Director Nelson about something." Nodding, Kinzu retracted his gaze and followed with a smile. Soon, under the leadership of Nelson, the few people found a very spacious lounge at the end of the corridor. After entering, as soon as they found a seat and sat down, Nelson said with a wry smile, "Clean, today's incident is quite serious. What are you going to do?" "Well, thank my wife for the 10,000 book coins reward. Ahem, well, it's a good thing she doesn't read books, otherwise I would probably kneel on the washboard." Chapter 941. The situation changes suddenly. "Me?" Pointing at himself in surprise, Kinzu sat up straight and shouted exaggeratedly, "Chief Nelson, are you sure? I'm the victim, and you asked me what I was going to do." This, Nelson shook his head with a wry smile, and suddenly he didn't know what to say. But Kinzu was so smart, he knew everything as soon as he saw his expression. With a sneer, he leaned back in his chair, crossed his legs, and said indifferently, "Tell me, Chief Nelson, whose family is this? How big is their background?" Seeing that Kinzu understood, Nelson stopped pretending, stood up straight, and said with a smile, "The background is not that big. He is just the son of a state senator, but his family is rich. The catering industry in the entire metropolitan area is basically controlled by them." "Oh? Catering industry?" Kinzu's expression suddenly became serious. "Yeah, have you heard of the Will Group?" "Will Group?" Kinzu scratched his head in confusion and cast his eyes on the people around him, wanting to know if they had heard of this Will Group. "Clean, the scale of this group is indeed quite large." Unexpectedly, this time it was Lin Yu, the girl with glasses, who suddenly spoke up. "Oh? You know? Well, I once designed a hotel for them." Nodding, the girl with glasses did not deliberately undermine Kinzu this time, but said with some concern, "The strength of their group is very strong. It owns many 5-star hotels and several chain restaurants. It can also be ranked in the top 10 in the entire American catering and hotel industry. So powerful." Kinzu pouted and looked at the slightly arrogant girl with glasses beside him, and asked with a smile, "Then do you know how much their market value is?" "This, I haven't paid attention to it." Shaking her head, Lin Yu herself was a little embarrassed. She just heard that the strength of this group is very strong, but how strong it is has nothing to do with her, so of course she won't care about these. The market value is not bad. According to yesterday's closing situation, it should be around $2 billion US. Nelson, who was sitting opposite, suddenly interrupted. "How do you know so clearly?" Looking at this guy with some curiosity, Kinzu couldn't help but speculate maliciously. "Is he related to this group?" "Clean, don't think too much." Shrugging his shoulders, Nelson said helplessly, "Before you came, the mayor of Boston had called me and asked me to suppress the matter as much as possible, so I went to check the background of that kid." "The mayor called?" This time, Kinzu's brows were really frowned. The power of both the political and business circles is so considerable. It seems that it will not work to deal with the kid this time. Glancing at Nelson, who was looking embarrassed, Kinzu's heart suddenly moved. It seems that things are not as simple as he imagined. He is still thinking about dealing with that kid, but if he fails, it will be a problem whether he can get out. Thinking of this, Kinzu looked at Nelson deeply, and then did not speak again. Instead, he took out his mobile phone and called Douglas directly. After the phone rang twice, it was quickly connected, and Douglas's slightly teasing voice came through the microphone. "Why, Clean, you remember to call me now? Aren't you with your group of beautiful wives and concubines?" Kinzu secretly glanced at Zumengya beside him. He was not sure whether the girl heard him or not. He wiped the non-existent cold sweat on his forehead and said quickly, "Doug, I'm calling you because I really have something to trouble you." "Oh? What's wrong?" Hearing that Kinzu's voice was a little strange, Douglas thought that something had happened to him, and quickly sat up straight. "No, I just didn't check the almanac before going out today, and I encountered some trouble." Shrugging his shoulders, Kinzu smiled bitterly and simply recounted what happened today. Finally, he glanced at Nelson and said with some emotion, "The police chief is sitting next to me now. It seems that if I don't solve the problem, I really can't go out today. Ha ha, how could it be? After listening to Kinzu's narration, Douglas obviously breathed a sigh of relief and laughed. Don't say anything else, Clean. If you just let David go, I guess the mayor of Boston won't dare to embarrass you. Oh? This guy has this ability. Kinzu opened his mouth in surprise. Did he still underestimate David? Or did he still underestimate the former owner of the ranch behind David, Bud Hill? Of course, Mr. David is very powerful. As if thinking of something, Douglas's voice became a little ethereal, and it was also vague in Kinzu's ears. Okay, Doug, let's not talk about this for now. You should think about how I can get out. Kinzu shrugged his shoulders. He felt that this place was not the right time to discuss this matter. Because his personal female bodyguard went to take a statement and has not returned yet. If I guessed correctly, she should be controlled by the old man opposite. Get out? It's very simple. He chuckled twice and said jokingly, Clean, you really don't look like a billionaire. There is no need for you to show up in person for such things. Huh. Kinzu was a little stunned when he heard it. He could get out without showing up in person. How did this work? Lawyer, man, did you find your lawyer just asleep at home? Douglas seemed to be unable to bear Kinzu's slowness, and there was a hint of helplessness in his tone. Okay. Wiping the cold sweat from his forehead again, Kinzu smiled awkwardly and said, I think I know what to do. That's good, Douglas said earnestly after taking a long breath. Clean, you have to remember that in this capitalist country, there is nothing that lawyers can't solve. If one lawyer can't solve it, then hire a team of lawyers. As long as you have money, you can get a suspended sentence for murder. Okay, I think I'm not that impulsive. Shrugging, Kinzu hung up the phone speechlessly. This guy, why did he tell me this? Is he suggesting that I kill that guy? It shouldn't be that bad, right? Shaking his head and putting aside the terrible thought in his mind, Kinzu called Jefferson directly. Jefferson, who received Kinzu's call, was accompanying Chainmew to handle the procedures everywhere at this time. After listening to Kinzu's narration, he immediately said, Boss, don't say anything from now on. I'll be there right away. Chapter 942. Fence sitter, leaning to both sides. He said so, and he did so. Before Kinzu finished his cup of coffee, Jefferson rushed into the director's office panting. Boss, are you okay? Without taking a breath, Jefferson rushed to Kinzu's side, with a concerned expression on his face. Although he knew that this guy was trying to win favor, Kinzu couldn't help but feel warm in his heart, and nodded with a chuckle. I'm fine, but today's matter seems a little difficult to handle. Don't worry, boss, just leave it to me. Patting his chest, Jefferson turned around and looked at Nelson, with a very bright smile on his face. Mr. Policeman, I wonder what you were detaining my client on? Illegal carrying of firearms, wounding people with guns in a busy city, is that enough? Nelson frowned, feeling a little unhappy. Obviously, you are all related, it would be better if you just compete for the relationship, whoever wins will help, why bother to find a lawyer? Oh, no. I think you got something wrong, Mr. Policeman. Jefferson waved his hands exaggeratedly and defended himself seriously. First of all, I want to make it clear that my client and his bodyguards are all people with free gun licenses, so it is not illegal to carry guns. Then, what about shooting and injuring people? Nelson was not so easy to fool. He sat up straight and said directly, you know, his life was not in danger at the time. Oh? No life threatening? Were you at the scene? Who can prove it? Without giving Nelson a chance to speak, Jefferson continued to ask, being surrounded by a dozen armed gangsters, would you choose to surrender, Mr. Policeman? Of course not. Nelson shook his head subconsciously. Although he felt that he would definitely surrender, he dared not say this. What if it was spread out, would he still have this old face? That's it. Jefferson clapped his hands and came to a conclusion very straightforwardly. Since the police officer will not surrender even when surrounded, how can my client, a billionaire, surrender? You, Nelson was choked by Jefferson's words. He didn't catch his breath for a long time. He said you several times, but didn't know what to say. Okay, police officer, if there is nothing else, we will leave first. Waving his hand, Jefferson signaled Kinzu and the others to go out, and then looked at Nelson who was about to say something, and smiled. Of course, as a law-abiding American citizen, we will appear in court to testify for you at any time when the police officer needs us. After saying that, without looking at Nelson's ugly face, Jefferson walked out directly. Boss, are you saying that Miss Dale went to take a statement? As soon as he walked downstairs, Jefferson heard a piece of news that made him frown. Yes, she was taken away as soon as she came in. Touching his nose, Kinzu felt that his performance today was really bad. He was completely led by the old fox Nelson. At first, seeing his enthusiasm, I thought this guy was one of us, but he turned out to be a fence-sitter. Boss, don't worry, there shouldn't be any accidents. Seeing Kinzu's expression was not very good, Jefferson thought he was worried about this matter, and hurriedly smiled and comforted him. Miss Dale is not that simple, the police's little tricks will not work on her. Ha ha, that's true. Kinzu nodded with a smile, and forced himself to suppress the anger in his heart. Now I am still too weak. Boss, you're out. Just as Kinzu and his friends were about to go find Dale, a clear voice sounded beside them. Dale, are you okay? Sister, are you okay? Several concerned voices came out from several people at the same time, which made Dale, who rushed over, feel very happy. Of course I'm fine, don't you see who I am? He raised the corner of his mouth proudly, as if he remembered something, and a look of contempt flashed across Dale's face. Those idiots are trying to trick me. They are just dreaming. Sure enough, after looking at Jefferson, Kinzu was more certain that Nelson was just a fence-sitter. He probably wanted to come and deal with the matter after receiving the call from the mayor of Boston. But when he came, he found that Kinzu was not easy to mess with, so he simply made things clear and wanted to not help either side. In other words, he wanted to see which side had enough chips. Otherwise, he would not have thought of getting a confession that was unfavorable to both sides. Okay, boss, let's go out first. Looking at the police coming and going around, Dale's face wrinkled slightly. She didn't have a good impression of these guys now. Well, let's go back first. Nodding, Kinzu didn't think about it anymore, and turned around and walked out of the police station. Just when he arrived at the door, Kinzu unexpectedly found that Chenmu was also here. Ha ha, boss, why do you feel so destined to be with these guys? Seeing Kinzu coming out, Chenmu breathed a sigh of relief and greeted him with a big laugh. Go away, who wants to be destined to be with these guys? Looking back at the police station sign, Kinzu spat on the ground in annoyance. It seems that what Chenmu said is true. After coming to the United States, he has really dealt with these violent agencies. Well, in fact, I really want to be destined to be with these guys. Shrugging his shoulders, Chenmu stretched out his hand to help Kinzu open the door of a Cadillac, and said with a smile, Boss, please bear with it and take my car first. Come on, a Cadillac worth more than 1 million, why should you be wrong? Kinzu pouted and ignored this guy, but looked at Zumengyo beside him. Wife, let's go, let's try how it feels to sit in a Cadillac. After chuckling twice, the beautiful Zhu, who was obviously in a much better mood after leaving the police station, didn't hesitate to get in. After Zumengyo sat down, Kinzu looked around and asked, Brother Chen, how many cars did you drive here? Can they fit? Boss, don't worry about that. Shrugging his shoulders, Chenmu said very proudly, I knew you would bring a lot of people with you, so I asked the guys to drive several cars here. Look, they're over there. As he said that, Chenmu pointed to the back, and several box pickup trucks suddenly appeared in front of Kinzu. Kinzu turned his head speechlessly, looking at this smug guy, and he wanted to punch his handsome face into a big watermelon. Are you here to pick up people or goods? Chapter 943 Return. Beep beep, a series of slightly hurried car horns startled many small animals on both sides of the road on the interstate highway, which was very empty. Hey, brother, do you think this one looks good? In night the 15th, Kinru, who was carrying a beige dress, showed off her new clothes regardless of the fact that she was still in the high-speed car. You know, this was bought by Zumengyo for her. Just this little dress cost more than $20,000. It looks good, okay. Kinzu, who leaned on the beautiful Zhu, almost fell asleep after responding weakly. After dealing with the morning's affairs, the few of them strolled in Boston, which had returned to peace, for an afternoon. You don't know until you go shopping. This shopping trip made Kinzu see women's love for shopping. Even Dale, who always didn't care about anything, couldn't help but join the shopping army under the leadership of Eva. Now, the two who are supposed to be bodyguards and bag carriers have become hands-off bosses, so the task of carrying the bag naturally fell on the man. Fortunately, Kinzu subconsciously pulled Chenmu and Jefferson with him before he went out. Otherwise, he didn't know if he could have survived until now. Humph, bad brother, no sincerity at all. Kinru, who was happily waiting for Kinzu's praise, was irritated by her brother's attitude, and pouted and complained to Zumengyo. "Sister-in-law, look at my brother, he doesn't love me anymore." "Nonsense, of course I don't love you." Rolling his eyes, Kinzu interrupted at an inappropriate time. "I love your sister-in-law, why should I love you?" "You?" After opening her mouth, the little girl found that she really had no way to refute the words of her bad brother, and she couldn't help but stamp her feet in anger. "HMPH, I won't pay attention to you. My sister-in-law is still better." "Of course my sister-in-law is better, but a little too good." As if he was addicted to bickering with the little girl, Kinzu turned over, looked at Zumengyo with a smile on her face, and said with some blame, "Wife, why did you buy her such nice clothes? It's a waste for her to wear them." "Stinky brother, whose clothes are you saying are a waste?" The little girl was successfully irritated by Kinzu's words, and regardless of the fact that the car was still moving at high speed, she suddenly pounced on Kinzu. "Ha ha, of course I am talking about you." Kinzu sat up and dodged the little girl's attack. He pushed her into Zumengyo's arms and said with a smile, "You are so young, why do you wear such nice clothes? Be careful that no one will play with you when you go to school." After Kinzu said this, the little girl really quieted down. She couldn't help shaking her little finger with her mouth and said a little hesitantly, "Then, what should I wear when I go to school?" "That's not necessary." Shaking her head, Kinzu saw that she listened to him, and couldn't help but touch her black long hair with his hand with relief, and said with a smile, "Just wear something ordinary, not too good, but not too bad." "Well, then I listen to my brother." Nodding her little head, Kinru rarely refuted Kinzu's words. Because she knew very well that what Kinzu said was indeed very reasonable. Because in her previous school, there was such a girl, who was very fashionable and beautiful. But she didn't have many friends in school. Including myself, no one wants to get too close to her. After all, school is different from society. Although it is called a small society, it is still just a school. Perhaps in society, people usually use a person's dress to measure whether he/she is worthy at making friends. In school, this situation is relatively rare. Not only that, if you dress too well in school, not only will you not bring yourself friends, but people will involuntarily alienate you. After all, students are still very simple. Except for those who don't care about anything, they are afraid that others will say that they are flattering others and clinging to others. "Okay, little girl, don't listen to your brother's nonsense." Zingsayu on the side smiled and patted Kinru's arm. When she looked over, she smiled and said, "Your brother's ideas are all outdated. This is America, which is different from our country." What's different?" Blinking her big eyes in confusion, Kinru sat up and looked at Zingsayu with a strong desire for knowledge. Although she was usually cheerful, she still felt a little panicky about going to a strange country, a strange school, and accepting a strange education model. They are fundamentally different. Putting away the smile on her face, Zingsayu seemed to be lost in some memories, and said softly, "When I first came here, I thought that this place was the same as in China, where the first bird to stick its head out gets shot, so when I encountered problems, I always chose to take a step back and the sky would be wider. This also led to my poor popularity in school. I was the kind of person who could be bullied by anyone." "Then, what happened later?" "Later?" With a smile on her lips again, Zingsayu said with some pride, "Later I figured it out. If it's mine, why not fight for it? If you don't fight, others will only laugh at you and will never be grateful to you." "Is that so?" Kinru nodded thoughtfully, blinked, and asked, "Is it different from China in terms of dressing?" "Of course." After Zingsayu gave Kinru an affirmative answer, she explained with a smile, "This is actually the difference in values between the East and the West. What Westerners like to do is to show themselves and show others the best and most dazzling things about themselves. Then, are Orientals more reserved? Yes, Orientals value implicit beauty and the doctrine of the mean. They don't like to argue with others." "Oh, I see." Nodding her head, Kinru was now confused by the two theories of Zingsayu and Kinzu, and asked in distress, "Sister Sayu, what do you think I should do in the future?" "Of course, follow your heart." Giggling twice, Zingsayu taught in a tone like a big sister next door, "Shaoru, you should know that now that you have such a rich brother, you definitely don't have to worry about the future, so just do whatever you want." Kinzu, who was standing aside, felt a little numb when he heard this. He couldn't help rolling his eyes at the girl and muttered, "What are you talking about? Don't teach my sister bad things this time." "How is that possible?" Xing Xiu was a little unhappy with Qin Zhu's contempt, and couldn't help saying, Xiaoru is so well behaved. Do you think everyone is like you? Like me? What's wrong with being like me? Qin Zhu was confused. Before he could ask, he suddenly felt the Knight the 15 slam on the brakes. Squeak, bang. 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 Chapter 944 Siege and Blockade. The inertia caused by the sudden brakes caused the guys in the car who were happily chatting but not wearing seatbelts to suffer bad luck. They were hit one by one with their teeth bared. What's going on? Covering his painful head, Qin Zhu hurriedly stood up and asked loudly to Dale, who was driving in front. Because in this short moment, he heard several crisp gunshots. Boss, we're surrounded. It seemed a little awkward. Dale's voice was angry and a little ashamed. Come to think of it, she was in a lead from the Women's Special Brigade, but she didn't react until she was surrounded by a group of rabble. Surrounded? Qin Zhu was a little stunned when he heard this. Surrounded on the highway? Did he drive too fast and attract the police? It shouldn't be. With doubts, Qin Zhu leaned in front of the car window and looked out through the special bulletproof glass. Fuck, it's that guy. Qin Zhu couldn't help but curse when he saw the people coming out of the cars surrounding them. It was because this guy was the white man who had troubled him in the downtown area this morning. It seems that his name is Powell, right? Well, it should be. His family's group is the Wu group. Boss, turning around, Dale looked at Qin Zhu with an inquiring look, and it was obvious that he was asking him what to do. Damn, this bastard is still haunting him, right? After cursing angrily, Qin Zhu turned his head and looked at the people around him, and said, Everyone sit down, fasten your seatbelts, hurry up. After hearing Qin Zhu's words, although everyone was a little confused, they quickly returned to their seats and fastened their seatbelts. Boss, what do you mean? Dale seemed to understand something, with a hint of excitement in his expression. Qin Zhu stared at Powell, who was standing in front of the car with dozens of bodyguards and shouting something at him, and said fiercely, Hit. Hit him and killed him. Okay, boss, just sit tight. After answering in a somewhat stiff Chinese language, Dale's face flashed a fierce look, and he stepped hard on the foot. The Knight the 15 thrust towards the convoy in front like a wild horse. Get out of here quickly, I will definitely fuck you today. Powell, who was shouting arrogantly with a loudspeaker, was startled by the roaring engine sound of the Knight the 15th, because this sound was the most familiar to him. Thinking back to the past, when he and his friends were racing, what he liked to hear most was the sound of the accelerator being stepped on to the extreme. But now, there was no need for the support of the bodyguard next to him. Thinking of the terrible consequences, Powell jumped to the side. Boom. Squeak, 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 a deafening sound rang out the moment Powell just lay down. The sound of metal friction that followed made him feel a pain in his teeth. Damn it, damn yellow monkey, I will never let you go, never. Standing up, Powell looked at Knight the 15th, who broke out of the encirclement fiercely and roared loudly. Master, what should we do now? Seeing that he seemed to want to curse a few more words, a bodyguard leader next to him hurried forward to remind him. They are about to run away. Snap. An expected slat fell, and Powell's roaring voice also rang at the same time. Hurry up and chase them quickly, I must kill them. Yes. He agreed loudly, and the bodyguard leader immediately began to summon his men around him, and then counted the vehicles that could still be used, and chased Qin Zhu and the others directly. It must be said that being a bodyguard for a rich young master is unquestionable. That is, the equipment configuration must keep up with the trend. Even though Qin Zhu had run for a while in advance, their car still caught up with him very quickly. After all, an armored off-road vehicle cannot be that fast while focusing on defense. Boss, it seems that we can't get rid of them. Through the review mirror, Dale saw a dozen black cars getting closer and closer, and his brows slightly frowned. Turn around and hit them again. Without hesitation, Qin Zhu decisively gave the order and took out his mobile phone from his pocket. Hey, boss, how was your fun outside today? Aya's voice came through the microphone, and the expression on Qin Zhu's face eased a little. It's terrible. I met some ignorant guys. Oh? Someone dared to provoke the boss? Elsa stood up from the sofa in surprise and asked angrily. Where are they? I'll go and kill them now. You really need to come over. Shrugging his shoulders, Qin Zhu glanced at the endless pasture outside the car window and said with a wry smile, I can't tell you exactly where it is. Anyway, it's on the interstate highway leading to Boston. It's a big scene. You'll see it when you come. Okay, I'll go over now. Elsa agreed neatly and waved at her sister, wanting to hang up the phone. Remember, drive a helicopter directly over, bring all the ammunition, and blow him up for me. Elsa was stunned when she heard the words, and then she reacted, and a worry rose in her heart. It seems that the situation is indeed a bit dangerous. Sister, what's wrong? Ween, who had prepared the equipment in advance according to her sister's gesture, saw that her sister looked a little ugly, and she couldn't help but get a little nervous. No, nothing, shaking her head, Aya had no intention of talking to her sister in detail. As she walked out, she ordered, hurry up and call them together. I'll go get the helicopter. We need to use a helicopter. Is it the boss? With a heart full of doubts, Ween quickly began to gather the female bodyguards and gathered at the open space outside. Boom. Another loud noise came, and on the wide and straight highway, a black car was directly knocked to the side of the road and kept rolling. Creak, creak. After a flurry of emergency braking, more than a dozen cars stopped at the side of the road in a mess. The doors opened and dozens of strong men with weapons walked down. Hit them hard. Powell, who was sitting in the car and didn't dare to show his head, shouted viciously into the intercom. Bang. 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 Bang, bang, bang. After hearing their master's order, the strong men did not hesitate. They raised their weapons, aimed at the Knight the 15th who was still turning around, and shot randomly. Chapter 945 Howling Fire Snake. Brother, will we die? Kinru, who was lying on the seat and held in Zumengyo's arms, couldn't help shaking as she heard the crackling gunshots outside. She was just a child. A child who hadn't even graduated from junior high school. When had she ever seen such a scene? If it weren't for her brother and sister-in-law, she would have fainted by now. Don't be afraid, Shaudra, they can't fuck us. With a bright smile on her face, Zumengyo said as she held Kinru's trembling body tightly with her hands. As a descendant of a wealthy family, although she had never seen such a fierce scene in her life, she could still keep calm at least. Really? As if infected by Zumengyo's bright smile, Kinru slowly stopped sobbing and raised her little face like a pear blossom in the rain to look at her. Ha ha, of course it's true. A loud laugh came from the side, interrupting the conversation between the two. Are you scared? Don't worry, it's okay. Our car is bulletproof. As long as they don't have heavy weapons, they can't hit us even if they die of exhaustion. Kinzu leaned over from the side and pointed at the window. Hearing this, Zumengyo and the others couldn't help but look in the direction of Kinzu's finger. Sure enough, on the transparent glass window, although there were flaming bullets hitting it from time to time, they only left small white spots, and the glass didn't show any signs of breaking. Is this the legendary bulletproof glass? Kinru opened her mouth and looked at the exaggerated scene in front of her. She forgot to choke for a moment. What legend? You sit here every day, okay? Kinzu rubbed the little girl's head lovingly. Although he pretended to be indifferent, he began to worry in his heart. Although the protective power of bulletproof glass is very strong, it is not invincible. It might be okay to defend against some pistols and rifles, but if you bring a submachine gun and shoot continuously at a point at close range, it won't take long to smash it. After all, water drops can penetrate stones, let alone bullets. Moreover, if the other party is carrying heavy weapons, it will be easier to deal with. There is no need for heavy machine guns, just a light machine gun can beat a group of them into dice. Boss, sit tight, we will charge again. After shouting to the back in a very steady voice, Dale stepped on the accelerator, and Knight the 15th immediately let out a dull roar, and rushed towards the crowd with bullets constantly hitting him. Fuck. Fuck. You bunch of rubbish. Powell jumped out of the car in a somewhat embarrassed manner and hid aside, feeling that his lungs were about to explode. He hit so many people and so many guns, and he ran to surround a few women, but he was made so embarrassed by them. Well, this guy never took Kinzu seriously from the beginning to the end. He is just a yellow monkey, and it is not a matter of raising your hand to deal with him. Master, the enemy's car is specially made, and our guns can't penetrate it at all. After hearing what Powell said, a bodyguard leader who retreated to the side couldn't help but complain and defended. Bang. Why do I spend so much money to keep you? After raising his hand and slapping him, Powell's somewhat hysterical voice resounded throughout the battlefield. Find a way for me, even if it is one of his tanks, I will scrap it for me today. Now Powell is like a wild cat whose tail has been stepped on. He looks hysterical, and the bodyguards around him unconsciously step back. However, he doesn't care about all this. What he wants to do most now is to catch the female bodyguard who dared to point a gun at him. Powell once swore to God that if he could catch this bitch, he must make her regret coming to this world. From childhood to adulthood, when have I ever been so embarrassed? Ha ha, boss, look at that guy, he's jumping up and down. Erica, who saw this scene through the review mirror, couldn't help but smile with a mocking smile on her face. If they hadn't brought a few burdens in the car, they could have handled it with these bodyguards. Okay, let's go, I guess they should catch up soon. Shaking his head, Kinzu felt for the first time that Night 15's speed was a big weakness, and he couldn't outrun him at all. Sure enough, not long after he finished speaking, a series of car roars and crisp gunshots came from behind him. Damn, this guy is too arrogant, right? Kinzu was a little crazy. This is an interstate highway, not their Appalachian Mountains. How dare these guys be so arrogant? I guess they have caused a car accident in front, otherwise, there should have been a car coming. Shaking his head, Dale, who was always paying attention to the situation through the review mirror, said very calmly. That's right, boss. It only takes a small car accident like that to paralyze the whole road. Erica shrugged and agreed. For them, these were all child's play. Well, these guys are really looking for death. Kinzu looked at the time and a sneer flashed across his face. It's good to do this. When I and the others arrive, we can take action. As the saying goes, if you speak of the devil, he will appear. Kinzu had just been thinking about Aya when he heard Dale's happy voice in front of him. Boss, they are here. They? Who? Kinzu didn't react for a moment. He asked subconsciously and then looked out the window following Dale's gaze. Boom, a helicopter, all black with a majestic-looking harpy eagle figure printed on it, flew over from a distance in an instant. Fuck. What's going on? Where did the helicopter come from? Looking at the helicopter flying closer and closer in the air, Powell had a bad feeling for some reason. He should be passing by, right? While answering Powell uncertainly, the bodyguard leader picked up the walkie-talkie and asked everyone behind him to put away their weapons. In their minds, in the United States, no one except the police and the army has armed helicopters. Therefore, when it was confirmed that this was neither the police nor the army, no one was alert to it. The only thing they were worried about was that this guy who suddenly appeared would choose to call the police when he saw so many of them holding guns, so the bodyguard leader asked everyone to put away their guns. However, the truth is always so unexpected. Just when everyone put away their weapons and quietly waited for this guy who suddenly appeared to disappear, they saw two fire snakes appearing out of thin air and rushing towards them with a roar. Chapter 946 ending. Fuck. Run. Powell only had time to let out such a roar before he was thrown to the ground by the bodyguard leader beside him. What a joke. Racing with machine gun bullets? From the day he entered the military camp, he understood a truth. Facing such a heavy machine gun, all you can do is hide in the bunker, then lie on the ground and pretend to be dead and try your luck. If you are lucky, nothing will happen. If you're unlucky, a stray bullet may blow your head off. As for running around in a panic to find a shelter, when you find it, it will probably become your grave. Machine gunners like the kind of guys who run around everywhere. As long as there are enough bullets, they will often greet you with a volley of bullets. So, the bodyguard leader now held Powell tightly under him, not letting him move at all. There is no way. Since you have become a bodyguard, you must be prepared to sacrifice your life for your employer at any time. Although the employer had a bad temper, he had never treated them badly in terms of money, so the bodyguard leader did this without hesitation. Powell seemed to understand something, and did not continue to struggle, but buried his head on the cold ground of the interstate highway. At this moment, he swore in his heart that as long as he did not die this time, he would definitely return everything today. However, he completely forgot the arrogance he had when he was chasing others just now. He also forgot the cause of this incident. Boss, do you want to get rid of them all? Kinzu couldn't help but shudder when he heard Aya's cold voice on the phone. My goodness, there are dozens of people here. You're having fun now, but I'm going to have fun next. Forget it, just teach them a lesson, let's go quickly. Shaking his head, Kinzu didn't want to stay and be taken to the police station again. Well, it's a bargain for these guys. Elsa curled her lips, somewhat unwillingly, and lightly pressed her hand, and a tongue of fire fell again. After doing all this, she didn't even look at her results. She pulled the joystick, and the helicopter drew an arc in the air, whizzing behind Night the 15th and heading towards the ranch. But what she didn't expect was that with that last casual press, a volley of hot bullets hit all around Powell. In addition to the bodyguard leader who was unlucky enough to be beaten into a dice, even he himself was hit in the thigh by a bullet, and he howled in pain on the interstate highway. Master, are you okay? Seeing that Kinzu and his group had left, the uninjured bodyguards quickly got up from the ground and rushed towards Powell. Quick, take me to the hospital. Powell covered his thigh and cried with tears and snot. At this time, he didn't think about revenge or humiliation. The only thing he wanted was to go to the hospital quickly. He must survive. He is still young and doesn't want to die like this. Quick, call an ambulance. Fuck you, can the ambulance still come? What should we do then? Hurry up and lift the car up, and call the master by the way, and ask him to send a helicopter over. After a flustered conversation, Powell was lifted into the nearest car, escorted by several bodyguards, and rushed back to Boston. However, they seem to have forgotten. They are now in the opposite lane. Boss, are you all okay? After a quick drive, Kinzu and his friends finally arrived at the ranch before dark. When he dragged his tired body and got out of the car with several women, the Eye sisters led the female bodyguards and quickly approached. It's okay, thanks to you for going in time. Shaking his head, thinking about today's conflict, Kinzu is still a little angry. After coming to the United States for so long, although some of the second-generation people he met are indeed not easy to deal with, this is the first time he has met such a brainless one. That's right, brother, you must not let them go. Kinru, whose calves were a little weak, couldn't help but fall on the sofa as soon as she entered the villa. When she heard Kinzu's complaints, she also started to yell a little aggrieved. A clever little girl like her has always been very strong-willed. This time, she was scared to tears in front of so many people, which hurt her little self-esteem. Don't let them go. Touching his nose, Kinzu felt that even if he wanted to let the guy go, that guy probably wouldn't let him go, right? After all, there should be quite a few people who died today. Thinking of this, Kinzu quickly took out his mobile phone and called Jefferson. What? Boss, you were attacked again. After hearing Kinzu's words, Jefferson, who had just returned home, stood up in an instant. As for what Kinzu said, he might have killed a few people during the counterattack, but he didn't care at all. As long as he was not caught on the spot by the police, let alone killing a few people, what would happen even if they were all killed? Yeah, those guys are too arrogant. Dozens of them are chasing me with weapons. Kinzu couldn't continue talking here. He was worried about his night the 15th. He had already seen it when he got out of the car just now. Although there was no problem with the internal parts, the appearance, I guess the Transformers looked better before they transformed. Not to mention the holes and dents from bullets, I don't know if it was a quality problem, but a piece of the front door was actually knocked off. Thinking of this, Kinzu couldn't help but shudder. If Elsa and the others hadn't arrived in time, the consequences would be really unimaginable. You know, the person sitting in the car door at the time was Dale, who was driving. Once she was injured, the night the 15th, which was speeding, would have flipped out of control. Boss, you stay at the ranch now, don't go anywhere. After pacing in the living room for a few steps, Jefferson said in a serious voice, Boss, you have to remember, no matter who asks you, you must not admit that you have had contact with them. Is this okay? Kinzu was a little uneasy after listening to Jefferson's words. He said suspiciously, there are a lot of surveillance cameras on the road, right? Will the police believe it? They have to believe it. Jefferson didn't care about Kinzu's suspicion. He laughed and explained, Boss, don't worry, the police can only do routine work, because the other party can't solve this matter through official channels. Why is that? Kinzu asked in confusion. Because they know that if they go through official channels, you can only lose both sides. Jefferson said with certainty. They can't fight with you for the future of their children, so the most likely thing is that you will solve it privately. Si est escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas, significat lo descarga and y subir en sinisfuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas all encontras la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas increíbles. Chapter 947 News from David Ding-ling-lin, looking at the familiar number on his phone, Kinzu couldn't help but shake his head. Since dinner till now, his phone has never stopped ringing. Whether it's familiar or unfamiliar, it seems that they all know that he is in trouble. Of course, in addition to friendly care, he also inevitably received a few angry threats. Hey, David, this is not like you, calling me so late. Kinzu couldn't help but tease after answering this familiar call. Ha, don't I know you are busy? After laughing twice, David asked with some concern, how is it? Is everything okay over there? Nothing is wrong, I just received a few threatening calls. Kinzu smiled and shook his head, lying on the sofa, while talking. A little story on the internet flashed in his mind inexplicably. For example, if the leader is sick and hospitalized, he may not remember who went to see him. But if someone didn't go to see him, he would definitely remember it most clearly. It's good that you're fine. As for threats, are you still afraid of threats? David chuckled twice, and his tone became relaxed. Why not? I'm a very timid person. Kinzu curled his lips, still a little concerned about the threatening phone calls today. Oh, don't you have enough female bodyguards in your manor? Although David pretended to be a little confused, the strong teasing in his words was clearly heard by Kinzu. Oh, God, David, when did you become so gossipy? Rubbing his head, Kinzu looked at the women who were talking and laughing in the restaurant with a guilty conscience, and suddenly felt that since coming to the United States, his peach blossom luck has become more and more prosperous. Okay, let's not talk about this. Laughing and interrupting Kinzu's contemplation, David said in a very serious tone. This time the matter has been suppressed. Both I and the other party have used some connections. Obviously, they are not going to go through official channels. In other words, am I in danger now? Kinzu asked back with a smile. You can say that. Nodding, David smiled and said, according to the latest news, Powell was shot in the inner thigh by you. It is estimated that he will never recover in this life. What? Kinzu's heart moved, and he asked uncertainly, who is Powell? Yes, the guy who caused trouble for you. David nodded very confidently. This guy is really unlucky. With a slight raise of the corner of his mouth, Kinzu suddenly felt that the depression in his heart was reduced by more than half. David smiled bitterly twice, and said nothing. After a few more instructions, he hung up the phone. He still had to do some finishing work. Although he said it so easily on the phone, it was really not so easy to suppress such a big thing. Especially that stupid guy. He actually drove against the traffic on the highway and was caught by the traffic police who rushed over to maintain order. Of course, these are not his worries, let the damn guy worry about it. And husband, come and eat, you've been on the phone all night. Zumengyo, who was waiting in the restaurant, saw that Kinzu's phone kept burping, and she couldn't help but complain with some dissatisfaction. If the guy causes trouble again, just let Sister Dale kill him. At worst, we can all go back to China. Anyway, we can live well in China. What my wife said is right. Kinzu, who walked into the restaurant with a smile, couldn't help laughing after hearing what the beautiful Zhu said. In China, we have our father-in-law to protect us. Let's see who dares to bully us. Humph, I'm glad to know. With a slight arc at the corner of her mouth, Zumengyo gestured to the opposite side. Hurry up and sit down to eat, it's cold. Boss, you sit first, I'll go heat it up. Seeing that the two had finished talking, Eva stood up with a smile and walked to the kitchen. It's okay, it's fine like this. Reaching out to stop Eva, who wanted to go to the kitchen, Kinzu pressed her shoulders and pushed her down again. Let's eat first. I have something to say later. Kinzu said so, and Eva didn't insist anymore. She sat back with a smile. After a while, when everyone had finished the food in front of them, Kinzu signaled Zumengyo to take Sayu and Linyu, the two guests, to rest first. No, Clean, you can't do this. Shaking her head, Linyu decisively rejected Kinzu's proposal. If we don't know anything, wouldn't it be more dangerous? Sayu, who was standing by, nodded and agreed. Yes, Clean, at least let us know what will happen next, so that we can make arrangements. That's it. Touching his chin, Kinzu felt that what the two said made sense. After all, it was because of him that the two are implicated. If he didn't make the problem clear now, what would happen if the two encountered any danger? Thinking of this, Kinzu waved his hand. Shaoru, you go upstairs and rest first. I still have to go, Kinru pouted reluctantly, her expression was very aggrieved. Why can two outsiders listen in here, but my sister has to go to sleep? Well, hurry up, don't waste time. Kinzu's expression was very serious, leaving no room for negotiation, which made Kinru's heart tremble a little. Okay, I'll go now. After agreeing with grievance, the little girl walked upstairs, looking back every few steps. Why do you have to send Xiaoru away? Isn't it better to let her listen? Eva, who had already vaguely guessed what was going to be discussed next, expressed great confusion about Qinzyu's insistence on sending Qinru away. In her opinion, letting children experience the wind and rain early will make them grow up as soon as possible. Maybe this is the difference in thinking between the East and the West. Seeing that the little sister went upstairs obediently, Qinzyu also smiled. Although he did not give a direct answer to Eva's question, he also gave the fundamental reason. Indeed, in the eyes of foreigners, China's patriarchal education is a bit too partial to children. But so what? If you don't love your own children, who will? Anyway, Qinzyu couldn't accept that children should be involved in the adult world too early. Children should grow up without worries. This is their right and the only stage in their life without too many worries. When they grow up, they will face their own pressures in society. By then, even if you give them time, they will not be in the mood to play. In other words, they no longer have the time to play. They still have a lot to do. Chapter 948 Arrangement. In the luxurious villa hall, the spacious leather sofas were surrounded by a circle of beautiful women. The most eye-catching one was the man sitting in the middle. Sitting on Qinzyu's left was Zhu Mengyo, who looked calm. She was not worried about what was going to happen next. At worst, she could just go back to China. Anyway, she didn't have to look at anyone's face in China. Eva, who was sitting on Qinzyu's right, looked a little unhappy. After all, the cause of this incident could be said to be the two sisters. Now that it has come to this, she is really worried that Qinzyu will have some opinions about them. Fortunately, Qinzyu has not shown any obvious dissatisfaction so far, which has gradually calmed her anxious heart. Boss, what is the situation now? What preparation should we make? After a moment of silence, it was Dale who spoke first to break the silence. For someone like her who used to be active on the battlefield, waiting is not what she is good at. Oh. Qinzyu came back to his senses after hearing Dale's voice. He smiled a little embarrassedly and said, "This time, the situation is probably a bit serious. Those guys are ready to solve it privately, so we still have to be prepared. In that case, I'll let the sisters make arrangements first." Seeing Qinzyu's expression was a little solemn, Erica stood up immediately. She was really worried that those guys would come and kill them now. No hurry, sit down first." He waved his hand. Although the expression on Qinzyu's face did not become very relaxed, a smile hung at the corner of his mouth. "We just stay at the ranch honestly these few days and don't go anywhere. If we are outside, I might still be afraid of them, but as long as they dare to come to the ranch to make trouble, then, Although Qinzyu didn't finish his words, the coldness in his tone and the creepy smile at the corner of his mouth made the women present shudder. "Honey, do you mean to let them?" Pointing to the snoring gorilla and white tiger sleeping in the nest nearby, Zhu Mengyo's face looked a little strange. Thinking that these little cuties were going to kill people, she felt a little uncomfortable. After all, one is of the same species and the other is of a different species. It's not that serious. At most, it's just to scare them. Qinzyu laughed a few times. That's good. Patting her chest, Zhu Mengyo looked at them with gentle eyes again when she heard that she didn't need to let the little cuties kill people. However, what she didn't notice was that Qinzyu only said to scare them, but didn't say what to do if they couldn't be scared. Are these big guys just exposed like that? That's absolutely impossible. Dale has no taboos about these things. After knowing Qinzyu's arrangement, a smile appeared on her face. "Boss, this way, our pressure will be much less." "Of course." Qinzyu nodded with a smile and continued. "You don't have to make any arrangements today, let them all rest early." Qinzyu had good intentions. After all, they had been busy for a long time today, but Dale did not appreciate it and shook her head to refuse. "Boss, there is no need to rest. Since there is no problem outside, I will let the sisters guard the villa." Seeing that Dale looked very serious, Qinzyu did not say anything, but smiled and nodded, which was considered as tacit agreement. "By the way, sister, remember to remind the cowboys." When Dale turned around and was about to go out to make arrangements, Eva on the side seemed to suddenly think of something and hurriedly said, "Tell them to stay in the house tonight and don't come out. Prepare weapons and other things. If there is any danger, report it in time. Don't worry about this." Dale nodded lightly, and a smile appeared on her face. "The cowboys on our ranch are not easy to deal with. Besides, we all lie together. If there is any movement, we will definitely not suffer any loss." "That's true." Qinzyu also agreed with this, but still said, It's better to remind them. If they hear the gunshots and suddenly rush out, it will not be good. Okay, I know. Kinzu said so, and Dale didn't say anything else. He agreed and turned to walk out of the villa. After Dale left, the two women sitting next to them, who had always been very confused, looked at each other and were a little confused. What Kinzu and his friends said seemed a little confusing to them. Some of them could be understood, but some of them didn't understand what they were saying at all. Although Kinzu saw the expressions of the two women, he didn't mean to explain at all. Or rather, he didn't know how to explain. Did you ask him to directly say to these two people, "Hey, there is a gorilla 7 or 8 meters tall and a python more than 10 meters long on my ranch? Oh, and there is also a jaguar that is more than 10 meters long." Kinzu estimated that he would be sent to a mental hospital by these two women before he finished speaking. So, although he felt a little ashamed of the blank expressions of the two, Kinzu pretended not to see them and closed his eyes, leaning back on the sofa. What's wrong with him? Seeing that Kinzu seemed a little tired, Lin Yu, the girl with glasses, looked at Zhang beside him, wondering whether she should go up and ask him clearly. Forget it, let's not ask for now. Since he didn't say anything, he must have his own reasons. Zhang, who looked a little gloomy, fell into silence after saying this, and seemed to have no intention of speaking again. Judging from the expressions of the female bodyguards, Zhu Mengyu and Eva, these people obviously knew what Kinzu was talking about. But why didn't he explain it to himself? Could it be that in his eyes, he was not even as good as a female bodyguard? The more Zhang thought about it, the more aggrieved she felt. Golden beams gathered in her eyes, and it seemed that they might fall at any time. Lin Yu, the girl with glasses, didn't have the same wild thoughts as Zhang. Seeing her tearful expression, she smiled meaningfully. Yes, she was much more mature than Zhang, who had just graduated from college. How could she have such wild thoughts because of one thing? The only thing she cared about now was how many women liked this damn man. However, neither she nor Zhang, nor Zhu Mengyu, who had just stood up and walked upstairs to see Kinru, noticed that in the corner of the living room, a small black snake had opened its eyes. Chapter 949 Summoning Snakes. Hiss, twisting his small body, Kinzu swam directly towards the door along the corner of the wall. Behind him, the sleepy little gorilla and the white tiger seemed to be a little unstable and followed behind him. No one could have imagined how terrifying the combination of these three little guys was. Walking out of the villa, feeling the cold wind blowing on his face under the night sky, Kinzu felt relieved. Perhaps, pythons belong to the wild after all, and it is still a bit depressing to stay in the villa all day. Roar! With a low roar, the white tiger, who was a little listless, was somewhat awakened by the gentle warm wind. Ignoring the unconscious roar of this guy, Kinzu looked around, found a position, and swam straight over. The white tiger and the little gorilla behind him looked at each other, and didn't say anything, and followed with their short legs. Although they are small now, none of them are slow when they run. After a while, Kinzu brought the two little guys to a small forest some distance away from the villa, and directly restored the huge python body. Roar! Seeing Kinzu restored the python body, the little gorilla and the white tiger who didn't understand what was going on also recovered. For a while, the small forest was full. Hiss, hiss, ignoring the two idiots around him, Kinzu raised his head and opened his mouth, and began to make some strange roars. This time, the two guys didn't feel strange, because they also knew this, just summoning their companions. That's right, Kinzu was summoning his companions. Summoning his group of subordinates. Hiss, 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 hiss. When Kinzu's roar just fell, a series of hisses came from the side, and there was a trend of getting louder and louder. Gradually, the grass on the ground began to shake, and the dead branches and leaves were crushed by something, making a painful groan. 1, 2, 3, red, black, green, blue, small snakes of various colors slowly appeared in front of Kinzu and stopped 10 meters in front of him. They were big and small, and of different species, but they were all the same. That was very honest. Yes, they were all very honest. Even if two guys who had a grudge against each other met and stood side by side, they were all honest and pretended not to see each other. Roar! Unable to help it, the white tiger took 2 steps back and a whimper came out of his throat. This was not fear. Except for Kinzu, it had never been afraid of anyone. However, the scene in front of him did make him a little uncomfortable. Tigers are always solitary creatures. When they saw so many densely packed creatures, they felt goosebumps all over their bodies. Not to mention the white tiger, even Kinzu at this moment was a little uneasy. Damn, the imagination and reality are indeed a little different. He originally thought that summoning a subordinate was just a matter of that. But now looking at the dense group of snakes, this guy was completely dumbfounded. Now his only impulse was to turn around and run. The farther the better. It would be best if he could take a shower and have a good sleep. If anyone in the villa paid attention at this moment, they would find that Kinzu, who was lying on the sofa, was trembling slightly, and his skin was covered with goosebumps. The gorilla next to him didn't feel anything about it. Instead, he stared at the group of snakes in front of him with some curiosity, as if he wanted to know how they managed to pile up together without falling off. Thinking back to the time when it and a few friends wanted to pile up together, but they fell down after piling up too, and it almost broke down. Roar! The white tiger really couldn't stand the increasing number of snakes gathering in front of it, and roared at Kinzu beside him, and the meaning was very clear. Brother, you hurry up and get it done so that we can call it a day. After being manipulated by the white tiger, Kinzu also came back to his senses. He raised his head and roared a few more times, which stopped the remaining snakes from gathering here. You know, although ordinary people can't hear Kinzu's roars, in fact, it has spread to hundreds of miles. Of course, only snakes can hear it, so it won't cause a riot of wild beasts in the entire mountain range. Hundreds of miles in radius, it's just a small area, but when you look at the bunches of snakes in front of you, you will understand how shocking it is. But as the person involved, Kinzu, after suppressing his nausea and looking around, the first thing that came to his mind was, damn, I didn't expect there were so many poisonous snakes around the ranch. It seems that I have to let them be more careful in the future. Roar, 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 rolling his eyes, the white tiger roared again in a low voice, as if you don't finish the job quickly, I will be angry with you. Okay, man, don't get excited. Shaking his big head, Kinzu soothed the white tiger a few times, then turned around and roared a few words at the snakes in front of him. In fact, the main reason for summoning the snakes is to guard against the attack from the power family that may come at any time. There is no way, the ranch is too big, and no one knows where those bastards will choose to come from. Not to mention that Kinzu does not have so many people. Even if he has so many people, it is impossible to guard against them all the time. Besides, it is always the case that a thief will be a thief for 1,000 days, so how can you guard against thieves for 1,000 days? Don't let the thieves not come by then, and you will be exhausted first. Therefore, the only way for Kinzu at this moment is to summon his group of younger brothers who are not younger brothers to help him take on this task. And the task is also very simple, that is, to see where there are many two-legged creatures approaching the ranch, and then report it in time. Well, Kinzu thinks this matter is really simple. Okay, let's go back. After shaking his tail and watching the snakes in front of him slowly retreat, Kinzu slowly shrank his body, turned around and wanted to swim back to the villa. He still missed the somewhat warm bed. Well, of course, it was Kinzu who missed it, not Cheese. Now, the two tall and strong guys behind him were not happy. What's going on? You made us come out here just to stand here and enjoy the cold wind? After you're done, you just want to go back. What should we do? Facing the resentful eyes of the white tiger and the gorilla, Kinzu felt that he seemed a little inhumane. Hiss, well, I didn't call you, didn't you follow me out on your own? Kinzu originally just wanted to defend himself, but as soon as he said this, he knew it was bad. Chapter 950. The spotted python that misreported military intelligence. Rubbing his aching body, Cheese lay in the grove not far from the villa, feeling aggrieved. You two idiots, it was obviously the master who teased you, why are you taking your anger out on my body? Just now, the white tiger and the gorilla, who were successfully provoked by Kinzu, took advantage of the fact that Cheese had not yet turned back into a python and grabbed the poor little guy and ravaged him. Fortunately, when Kinzu realized something was wrong, he regained consciousness in an instant, thus avoiding the fate of being curled up in the gorilla's hand. He ran away, but Cheese couldn't. Moreover, Cheese, who had just regained control of his body, was subjected to a brutal ravage before he could figure out what was going on. Moreover, facing this well-intentioned ravage, it didn't dare to resist, in case it hurt the harmony. So, as the boss, Cheese suffered a huge Waterloo this time, and was ravaged by the two younger brothers. After playing with the boss, the satisfied white tiger and gorilla staggered into the villa, found their own nest and fell asleep. After being ravaged by them, Cheese, who was still a little weak, lay in the woods and didn't want to move at all. Well, this is certainly not the reason for being ravaged. The most important thing is that it feels too stuffy to stay in the villa. It's not as comfortable as staying here. Well, really, it's definitely not because I'm afraid of losing face if I go back now. Muttering quietly in my heart, Cheese slowly propped himself up and planned to find a tall tree to climb up and sleep. Yes, it likes to sleep in the tree now. As for the reason, well, it doesn't know. As for when it started, it seems that it was after entering the mysterious place the time. Thinking back to the mysterious place, Cheese's little body shuddered involuntarily, shook his head, and didn't dare to think about it anymore. Hiss, hiss, Cheese was slowly. When he was about to lie down on a tree that could be hugged by 2 people, he heard a faint hissing sound of a snake. This is, after a moment of hesitation, countless sounds flashed through Cheese's little head, and finally, he was sure. This is the alarm. Cheese was refreshed and didn't care about climbing the tree. He arched his body, exerted force on his waist, and jumped down from the tree that could be hugged by 2 people. At the moment of bouncing, he shot forward. How fast is it now? No one knows. Anyway, it only took it 10 seconds to get from the grove next to the villa to the periphery of the ranch. Well, it's almost the speed of light. Before he could sigh at his abnormal speed, Cheese found the little guy who made the alarm the moment he landed. Well, of course, the 2-meter-long spotted python in front of him is indeed a little guy for Cheese who has recovered his python body. Hiss, anything. After Cheese hissed a few times and conveyed his meaning, he raised his head and stared closely at the big guy in front of him. Ahem, little guy, little guy. He couldn't help swinging his tail twice, and Cheese hesitated in his heart. Should he restore his python body? Otherwise, he would be too small and would not have much confidence in front of these guys. However, this thought only flashed through Cheese's mind. He knew very well that if his speed was the speed of light when he was a small body, then after he became a python, it would become a turtle speed. Stared at by Cheese's sharp eyes, the 2-meter-long spotted python couldn't help but shrink his neck. Although Cheese didn't turn into a python at this moment, his unique aura as a spirit beast had an oppressive force on ordinary wild beasts, especially his kind. It was not just the oppression of the strong on the weak. For the spotted python, Cheese at this moment was like the emperor who was high above, and people dared not look directly at him. Oh no, it was to make the snake dare not look directly. Crawling on the ground, the python's head was raised high and tightly pressed against the ground, and it just made a few incomprehensible hisses. You mean, there are a lot of bipeds come in? After carefully identifying for a long time, Cheese finally figured out what this guy wanted to express. He felt helpless about this guy's low IQ, but also a little excited. Good guy, you guys came so soon. Since you're here, then stay and have fun, don't run away so soon. Thinking that he was actually ravaged by the 2 little brothers because of this, Cheese's heart was rubbing up. In order to maintain family harmony, I can't get this place back over there, so I can only find it on you. Cheese made up his mind, notified Kinzu in his heart, and flicked his little tail, and shot in the direction indicated by the python. However, when it rushed over excitedly, it almost hit the tree. Damn, this is an animal with 2 legs. Through the darkness, Cheese's small eyes stared at a group of pheasants foraging in front of him for a while, then turned around and rushed back. He was going to kill the spotted python who lied about military intelligence. Damn, isn't it enough for me to lose face today? In the luxurious villa, Kinzu, who received the alarm from Cheese, woke up from his sleep instantly. Without thinking too much, Kinzu directly transferred his thoughts to Cheese who was about to rush back. Bang! Snap! After a series of muffled sounds, the frightened pheasants fled in all directions, and Kinzu, who was still a little dizzy, was almost taken away by a pheasant. After escaping the attack of the guy who didn't know whether to live or die, Kinzu shook his still dizzy head, trying to figure out what was going on. Why did he hit a tree as soon as he came here? Could it be that Cheese was upset? This shouldn't be the case. It was just ravaged by the white tigers. It's not like he was hurt. Could it be? Kinzu, who thought of a possibility, couldn't help but shudder. He scanned Cheese's little body back and forth, trying to see if there was anything wrong. Fortunately, Cheese, who was pushed aside by Kinzu's sudden arrival, came to his senses at this time and couldn't help but jump and curse. He didn't curse anything else, just asked Kinzu to kill the spotted python. Ahem, calm down, calm down. Kinzu coughed a few times and hurriedly began to comfort the poor little guy. Although the spotted python misreported the military intelligence, Kinzu didn't think it was a big deal. After all, its IQ was limited. If you want to kill it for such a small matter, who will do things for you in the future? Of course, these are just Kinzu's thoughts at the moment. Findiest capture much as great as Pelagahasta el final. No esse overdidal like busgasms contendo exclusive IXO in medito. Siascrabaton usteropatrian. Recurda, carda like, siascripsino donakinos anima continue. Greaters a todos nos vemos on alpsmovdo.